Call to order the meeting. Welcome to the City of Tempe Board of Adjustments meeting for February 25th, 2026. The time is now 6 o'clock. The City of Tempe Board of Adjustments is authorized by Arizona's revised statutes and the City of Tempe zoning ordinances. Its function is to grant relief where literal enforcement of the zoning ordinance would result in an unnecessary property hardship, to interpret provisions of the zoning ordinance's variances, and to hear appeals from any person or city official aggrieved the decision of a person responsible for the enforcement of the zoning ordinance, zoning administrator, or hearing officer abatements. The board has the City of Tempe Community Development staff summary reports on the items being considered at this meeting and will use this report in their deliberations. At this time, I will do roll call, starting with Andrea. Please announce your name.
Andrea Samishka here.
Robert Miller here.
Sean McCarley here.
Mary Foy here.
Kevin Morrow here.
Richard Dalton here.
Katie Cross here.
All right, and from staff, we have Jeff Tamilovich, is that correct? Timilevich. Ryan, I can't pronounce his last name. Levesque. Eric Anderson, Diane Kaminsky, Chris Jasper, Jennifer Daniels, and Eddie Garcia will be handling our media. At this time, I'd like to see if we have a motion to adopt the meeting minutes from last meeting. Is there a motion on the floor?
I'll make a motion to pass the meeting minutes.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 7-0. 7 passes. All right. So we are here today for an appeal of the zoning administration's decision regarding similar use interpretation. All applicants and interested citizens, when your request is called or when you wish to address the board, please make sure you have filled out one of the citizens' request forms located on the table by the doors. Then step to the microphone and state your name and city of residence. Please submit the form to staff before you begin speaking at the microphone. This will happen after the presentation of the appellate and the city. So make sure that you fill out those cards and let our staff know. Do I have to do separate study or can I do them together? Did I do that right? The minute meetings, I can just do them together? Yes. All right. All right, at this time, we will accept presentations from the appellate's attorney, Heather Bukes. Is it Bukes or Dukes? Dukes. Dukes.
Good evening, Chairwoman Foy, members of the board. My name is Heather Dukes of Dukes Law PLLC, and my address is 5527 North 25th Street in Phoenix. I'm here this evening on behalf of the appellants in this matter, and this is a similar use ruling that was issued by the zoning administrator on November 21st with regard to the Terawatt development proposal for the property at 2105 South Terrace Road. Terawatt is attempting to build an electrical vehicle charging station for 44 autonomous vehicles on a small vacant parcel less than 1 acre in size and zoned PCC1 Planned Commercial Center Neighborhood Zoning District. In a nutshell, we are here today asking that you find that the similar use ruling was issued in error. And that decision is erroneous because it allows a use that is inconsistent with the defined uses in the PCC1 zoning district, and it also allows a use which is more detrimental than the uses permitted in the PCC1 district. And so that is basically what we are asking you to decide here today, whether the similar use ruling is an error. I also want to give a little bit of context as to how we got here today. In the fall, there was a DRC hearing where a use permit was approved for this use. And we noticed when we went back through the record that this use is not actually allowed in the PCC1 zoning district. It's a rather new use, and so it's not contemplated in the zoning district. And when that happens, you're supposed to ask for a similar use ruling from the zoning administrator. And so the zoning administrator gave that similar use ruling in November, and that's why we appealed to the Board of Adjustment. From our perspective, technically, the use permit should have never been approved at this stage because we're still deciding whether this use is even allowed or requires a use permit. So that's just a little bit of history on the matter. So I want to go through really quick just the area in general before I address the defined uses in the zoning ordinance. This is just a context of the area. On slide 2, I'm showing an aerial photograph of the property and its surroundings. The terawatt parcel is marked with a yellow star, and as you can see, the parcel abuts a residential street with several single-family homes and schools directly to the south within a square mile of the area. On this slide, we've zoomed into the property and its surroundings a little further, and again, the terawatt property does not have direct access to the main arterial street of Broadway Road. Its only vehicular access point is on a residential street, which is specifically designed to be narrower, that's a hard word to say, narrower than collector or arterial streets, and to serve the sole purpose of connecting residential neighborhoods in the area. Residential streets like Terrace Road are not intended to be used for commercial or business purposes. I want to go through Terawatt's context plans and some of the photos just because these were submitted as part of the use permit. And they show how close this property is to the residential uses in the area. And so we're going to start at the southwest corner of the Terawatt property. This context photo 7 is a viewpoint of the single-family residences located directly south of the property when standing at that southwest corner. And then we're going to go to the southeast corner of the Terawatt property. And this is context photo 9, looking north from the southeast corner. I've added the yellow arrow pointing down to the condominiums to draw attention to how close those residences are to the shared property line. In this slide 8, this is context photo 11, looking south from the same southeast corner of the property, and you'll see the adjacent single-family residences there. Finally, we're moving to the northeast corner of the site, and this is context photo 14, looking east, directly towards the condominiums, which are just a few feet away. And then this is a context photo 15, looking south from the northeast corner of the Terawatt property, demonstrating again the close proximity of the abutting residential uses on two sides. So with all that being said, I want to go to the zoning map, and you can see the Terrace Road, and then there's the planned commercial center neighborhood on both sides of the Terrace Road. And that's consistent with the general area. So you have this residential road that's coming off of Broadway, and they've put the neighborhood commercial type uses on either side of that roadway. And then as you go farther east, that's when you have more of the multifamily residential zoning districts and the planned commercial center general. So PCC2 is for more general commercial type uses. PCC1 is for this neighborhood type uses, and that's what this property is designated as along that Terrace Road. So when you look at the permitted uses in commercial and mixed use districts, this is chapter 2 from the zoning ordinance. Section 3-201 talks about the purpose of those commercial and mixed use districts. And those districts are intended to encourage trip reduction, encourage pedestrian circulation as an alternative to driving. And so in this location, we're actually increasing trip generation by having these autonomous vehicles parked to be refueled and then to be dispersed from that area. So that's one problem, that we're not satisfying that purpose and applicability. And then with regard to section 3-201B, subsection 4, it talks about that the PCC districts are for neighborhood, PCC1, and that includes retailing, services, and entertainment uses oriented to serve the needs of the neighborhood. So when we move forward, you're going to notice that this isn't retailing, this isn't an entertainment use, but the staff is treating this as a service type use. And so we'll go through those definitions. These are some of the some of the uses that are permitted in the PCC1 neighborhood district, and all of these uses are for the benefit and in support of neighborhoods. They again are those uses that create social and economic vitality. There's a lot of employment that's generated by these uses, and they serve the community. With regard to the uses that are not permitted, So these are the ones that are marked with an N in that table 3-202A. You'll see that data centers are not permitted, some of the marijuana uses, large recycling centers, and auto body repairs. And I want to go to the data center for just a second. So it's interesting that this use is not permitted in PCC 1 because it's a use that's, it's not open to the public. It requires a lot of energy. It doesn't generate a whole lot of employment for the benefit of the surrounding neighborhood. And there's a certain fire and safety hazard that's usually associated with that type of use. And so that's very similar to what's going on here with this particular use, those factors. In addition, some of the uses that are permitted in industrial zoning districts but that are not permitted in the PCC 1 zoning district are dispatching when it's associated with a weighing station, a fuel distribution station, gasoline and petroleum bulk storage tanks, auto body repair, and towed vehicle storage. And these are industrial uses that are not neighborhood oriented. They're more similar to the type of use that's being proposed for this terawatt site. There's an element of risk due to the energy and chemical sources being stored. There may be nuisances associated with it in the form of odors or noise, and they're typically not open to the public. So this is the language from the similar use ruling of what's being proposed at the site. So this is taken directly from the zoning administrator's letter. And it says that it's going to be covered parking spaces to charge a private fleet of electric vehicles. The autonomous vehicles will enter the site for charging, cleaning, routine inspections. The proposed use is not intended for public use, and the cars are fully autonomous and do not have a human driver. They will be dispatched to conduct customer ride-sharing services and return as needed to charge and be cleaned by the on-site operator. And so this is a copy of the site plan. There's 44 spaces on site with the recharging stations. And again, you can see the access points off of the residential road. So I want to go through there's 3 conclusions. Let me just double check it. Yeah, there's 3 conclusions in the letter from the zoning administrator. And the first one is that the use is more similar to a vehicle-based service under the service category in that table 3-202A. And specific examples under this category include courier, delivery services, taxi, and ambulance dispatch as similar uses. And so, again, we're looking at service. And service is defined in the zoning ordinance. This is the definition from our zoning ordinance. It says it means useful labor that does not produce a tangible commodity. Now, what is not defined in the zoning ordinance is labor or useful labor. And so when you go to any dictionary online, labor usually means an expenditure of physical or mental effort, services performed by workers for wages, human activity that provides the goods or services in an economy. And so this concept of service is people providing a service to a neighborhood, to a community. This is basically cars charging. There's no service being provided on site that's human related, where the services are being performed by workers for wages or any type of expenditure of physical or mental effort. There's also, they say, the zoning administrator says that vehicle service and commercial surface parking facilities are also permitted uses in the PCC 1, and that this use could be analogous to those. So again, we've already addressed what service is defined as in the zoning ordinance. It usually entails useful labor by humans. Vehicle service means a use with minor automotive services, so again, labor by humans. And it entails detailing, windshield replacement, battery replacement, audio accessory installation, or similar uses. And so those are when people come and they need their vehicle repaired. This is a private fleet of vehicles. That's not what's occurring at this site. The garage commercial, that's defined in the zoning ordinance, and it talks about how you can store motor vehicles or park them for compensation, meaning the members of the public, they park their vehicles in a commercial garage, they pay to park there. That also is not occurring at this site. And then commercial use in general, so when the zoning administrator talks about commercial surface parking facilities, commercial uses usually provide consumer products or services, and commercial uses shall have a public point of sale or service. So again, this is a private fleet of vehicles that are being charged. There's no public point of sale or service occurring at the site with the neighborhood type uses that are usually allowed in the PCC1 zoning district. The zoning administrator also has stated that both service station and repair in the vehicle category in Table 3-202A are all permitted in the PCC1 with a use permit. And so service station talks about, this is a defined term in the zoning ordinance, where there's liquid fuel or lubricants are dispensed at retail. So again, nothing's being dispensed at retail at this location. Vehicle repair talks about retail sales and vehicle service uses. And there's an and between those two, where it's both retail sales and vehicle service uses. So again, both of those, neither of those are occurring at this site. I am going to turn it over now to Todd and Cheryl Smith. So I have talked about how this use is inconsistent with the definitions in the zoning ordinance that are allowed in the PCC1 district. It's our contention that this use is more appropriate for an industrial type zoning district, or at a minimum, a PCC2 general zoning district category, not a neighborhood type use. And so the neighbors that are here tonight are going to talk about how this use is more detrimental than the uses that are allowed in the PCC1 district, particularly at this location as well. Thank you.
Heather, I just wanted to make sure that you will be available for questioning after Todd and Wendy present.
Yes, I will be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Todd Smith?
Hi, how are you? Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Todd Smith. This is my wife, Cheryl. Let's see how this works here. I've been a resident in Tempe for over 30 years. My home is only 4 doors down from this proposed site. I'm going to be speaking to you about the fire danger and public safety danger that this site represents. I have 20 years plus of experience in public safety, working closely with Phoenix Fire Department. The alerting system my company developed is in all the stations in Maricopa County. It's now in 500 other cities and services 57 million people currently. My point of bringing this up is that I'm well acquainted with fire risks and fire technology. The site we're talking about is at 2105 South Terrace. It's just south of Broadway between Rule and McClintock. It's a little smaller than a football field. And as you can see, it is surrounded by homes, apartments, schools, and churches. The site will have the ability to simultaneously charge up to 30 electric vehicles and draw upwards of 5 to 6 megawatts of power. That 5 or 6 megawatt of power may not mean much. It's kind of like me saying my computer has 2 terabytes of memory. A lot of people are going to go, well, is that a lot? A lot of people don't know. So to give you an idea of how much 5 or 6 megawatts is, take a look at this image. 5 or 6 megawatts is enough to power 4,000 to 5,000 homes. This photo includes approximately that many dwellings. Every home and every apartment in this photo can be powered by the amount of energy that that little yellow square is taking. So that should that should give you pause. I mean, this is industrial infrastructure. This is not a donut shop. Just imagine the noise, the hum, even from the big power transformers that are going to be on this site. You can even take the cars out of the equation. I think we've all walked by a transformer and heard it humming, and these are megawatt transformers that are in place here. This graphic gives you another idea of the amount of power that's going into that site. On the left is a typical home. It doesn't even show up on the chart. A convenience store or a 100-unit apartment building barely shows on the chart. The average power the terawatt is predicting that they're going to be using is shown in the fourth column, and then the maximum power is on the right. So again, we're talking about an absolutely enormous amount of power you could have 50, 60 apartment buildings and not even hardly register on this chart compared to what Terawatt is going to pump into this site. Electric vehicles do catch on fire, sometimes from an accident, and sometimes they just spontaneously ignite. And typically this is due to a defect in the batteries. A Waymo car spontaneously ignited in a Phoenix warehouse 2 years ago. It took 50 firefighters and almost all day to bring that under control. That's one car. When they do catch fire, they burn at extremely high temperatures on the order of 2,500 to 5,000 degrees. That temperature is hot enough to melt aluminum, to melt steel, to melt anything that's in the vehicle. The fire is caused by a thermal runaway reaction inside the batteries. Basically, the hotter the battery gets, the faster the reaction proceeds. And the more the reaction proceeds, the hotter the battery gets, and it just continues on and on. An EV fire is very difficult to put out. It requires thousands of gallons of water and hours, if not days, to completely extinguish it. The Waymo fire in Phoenix, they ended up lifting the car and putting it into a dumpster full of wet sand, and it took 3 days for it to burn itself out. While the car is burning, it will release dense toxic smoke, and the prevailing winds will immediately blow that smoke into the apartment buildings that's next door. The prevailing winds in Tempe are west to east, so that apartment complex is going to immediately get inundated with the thick toxic smoke from the fire. Having one car on fire could easily lead to a cascade reaction where you get multiple cars on fire, in which case you've got your situation is much worse. The handouts that I gave you, if you want to see, there was a cascade fire event, brand new vehicles that were manufactured, and they caught on fire while they were charging. These hadn't even been on the road yet. Because of the security aspects of the Terawatt site, the fire department is going to have limited access to this facility. It has block walls, fences, and automatic gates. Remember, this is a secure public site. It's designed to keep people out. This is not a donut shop or an auto repair center. The fire department will have a limited amount of water. The fire hydrants in this neighborhood were designed for fighting fires in ranch-style homes built in the 1970s. They weren't designed to fight a 5-megawatt charging station full of electric vehicles. The typical fire hydrants can provide between 500 and 1,500 gallons per minute of water, which is enough to fight a single electric fire. Multi-vehicle fires would most likely overwhelm the available water supply. This charging station belongs in an industrial area with better facilities and infrastructure, not by schools and homes. While the fire department is trying to bring this fire under control, the water that's being poured on it will be contaminated with melted metals from the electric car. These metals include things like lithium, lead, nickel, cobalt, copper, organic compounds, and acids. All of this material will end up in the runoff water that will go right into the storm drains. These are the same storm drains that you have to get a permit from Tempe if you want to empty your swimming pool. Do you really want these types of materials going down the storm drains and possibly contaminating our groundwater? These issues are not a concern with an auto repair shop or a donut shop. It should be clear that this facility should be located in an industrial area with proper containment for the runoff water in the event of a fire. From an earlier hearing, Terawatt in the city of Tempe stated that this site would not be any more detrimental to the neighborhood than an auto repair shop or a fast food place. Let's make one thing very clear. The auto repair place does not need multi-megawatts of power. It does not operate 24/7 and generate noise night and day. The auto repair shop simply does not represent the potential for generating the very hazardous conditions that the Terawatt site represents. No one in 20 years has built an auto repair shop or a fast food place on that location, and the reason is simple, because it's a residential neighborhood. The Terawatt facility does not benefit the neighborhood in any manner. It's a private gated secured facility that's only a benefit to Terawatt and its customers. It's detrimental to the neighborhood in all regards. This project represents an industrial level risk in a residential area. I'm not opposed to autonomous self-driving vehicles. I understand technology. I actually enjoy technology. I believe these types of vehicles are the wave of the future. My key point, and really my only point, is that this facility belongs in an industrial area and not a residential area. Fire and public safety concerns need to be given a lot of consideration. And my wife Cheryl is going to speak next. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheryl?
Good evening. My name is Cheryl. I live same place, four houses away. There is an intersection at Terrace and Palmcroft. There's a map that could you pull up the map for me?
Yes.
Just across the street where there's a high school. Okay, so I don't know if this mouse works.
Okay. Do you want to?
Okay, yeah, I'll use the pointer. Anyhow, I just want to emphasize that we have a neighborhood rear access into Our Lady of Mount Carmel School Church preschool where hundreds of people attend. And so, let's see. I don't know if you can see it there. Is it working? Okay. So here's the facility. I'm so sorry. Here's the facility right here. And what you don't know is this intersection at Terrace and Palmcroft is a key gateway into a horseshoe here where many of us live. And there's a moat that provides public access to a rear alley to Mount Carmel School and Church, and two neighbors on Bernard, and historically for the last 40 years and probably for the next 40, have kept their back gates open. So several risks in this neighborhood. We have bicyclists and children crossing Terrace, not always safely because, adults and children in a hurry make risky choices. We have a child who's deaf here. We have a man with visual impairments down the street. We have an adult with a developmental disability all on this street. Children walk around this area to school through back exits. They cross the street. They chase dogs. It's a highly populated area. Besides the 10 or 15 children living in this area, during the weekends, the area swells with another 20 or 25 children with extended family gatherings. The streets are extremely narrow. They're local streets. They're double parked often. And there's a lot of chicken going on where you have to pull over to let people pass. So it's a pretty populous neighborhood, and we believe that the addition of a facility that will generate traffic into our neighborhood is of great detriment. Which brings me to my next point. Terawatt has promised in the past that no autonomous vehicles will travel south of the facility. Essentially no vehicles will enter the Terrace Palmcroft intersection except to answer a call in the neighborhood. We predict that this is a promise that is impossible to maintain. Yeah, I'm so sorry. Okay, so when the vehicles enter here and exit there, they are supposed to turn around and go back up to Terrace and Broadway, which is a treacherously crowded, congested intersection. It is our neighborhood's main exit into this area. And whether or not the vehicles that are autonomous clog this area, or whether it's our own traffic having to get out here, there's going to be excess spillover of traffic in all of these local streets, particularly right here. This is the first turn right they can make after the facility. So we predict that they'll either turn to the west here to seek alternate routes or to the east there, and could possibly be lined up circling our really narrow streets, posing great risk and detriment to our families. They have not yet divulged the future AV occupant of the facility, and I use AV for autonomous vehicles. They will have no direct oversight of this company's operation, and no city or public safety entity will be able to help enforce this. So we again maintain that this will be much more detrimental than a standard auto detailing store or a battery replacement area. The last thing I would like to do is to refute Terawatt's claim that autonomous vehicles are safer than human-driven autos. This is a claim which is not substantiated by research. We have been privileged lately to communicate with Dr. Jeffrey Wishart, PhD. He supported us at the Moxie community meeting in December. He was traveling and not able to join us tonight, but he has submitted a very relevant statement to the Board of Adjustment. He is the manager and lead authority on autonomous vehicles at General Motors Company in Tempe, as well as adjunct faculty at ASU and a national and global expert on autonomous vehicles. His resume is extensive. I can provide a copy if you'd like it. It was mind-numbing. He has been highly involved at every level with the development and safety of autonomous vehicles. He does say that we have accumulated lots of research, in fact, millions of miles and hundreds of scenarios experienced by autonomous vehicles, but it is still not enough. To quote him, "Their impact on public safety remains to be seen." To quote him, "This technology holds promise, but it is in the early stages of maturity." According to him, we cannot make blanket generalizations about the safety of any AV technology. The unending variation in different types of AVs, types of software, and new scenarios which each vehicle needs to encounter before it, quote, learns what to do, make it impossible to make broad judgments about the safety of AVs. Regarding this proposed facility, he states, "For this proposed Terawatt depot, any claims to safety cannot and should not be evaluated unless and until the particular AVs that will be serviced are named." He also acknowledges the fact that some of us have claimed that AVs are safer than humans. He says, "AVs are very good at nominal driving, which is expected situations. Conversely, humans can be prone to failure in nominal scenarios. However, AVs, to quote, do not extrapolate well for scenarios that are not included in their training or deployment of these vehicles. In other words, they are not good at assimilating the data they get and making a quick and rapid, accurate response. While, to quote, humans are very good at extrapolation because they have a world model that can be used to discern what is happening in a scenario they have never seen before." To summarize, he says, "As the proposal does not name the manufacturer or AV that will be serviced by the depot, I do not believe that this depot should be placed in a residential neighborhood and in such proximity to multiple schools where children and other vulnerable road users are common. In summary, I'd like to maintain that our very rich neighborhood is happily teeming with humans and our ever-changing new scenarios. Please leave us to enjoy our quality of life and continue to forge the neighborhood ties which are at the heart of our Tempe neighborhoods. Let this developing as yet unproven technology continue to evolve and make its mistakes in an industrial setting where it belongs, where it can function without seriously endangering this residential neighborhood." Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Todd or Cheryl?
I have a question for Todd. You had
Yeah.
cited a lot of the environmental concerns, the fire concerns, and stormwater concerns.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my wheelhouse. Like all those words were very familiar to me.
Okay.
And I know a lot about them. And where did that information come from?
It comes from my experience in going to a lot of fire meetings over the years, I sat in a lot of different fire presentations, that sort of thing. I also did quite a bit of research on electric vehicles when this was proposed to learn about, the types of hazardous chemicals that are given off in the fire and, what happens when those batteries have a meltdown.
Okay. And then this one is to supplement that. This might be more directed at staff. Does the fire department or the city's environmental services, have they weighed in on this at all?
When we do a site plan review, the fire department does review the applications with us, and the police department also.
Okay.
Yeah, I will say the codes are lagging for electric vehicles, especially fleet vehicle charging stations. The codes are lagging way behind. There's really no good electric codes yet for this type of a facility. And if it was put in place under existing fire codes, that would be a major mistake. I would not grandfather terawatt into existing fire codes. I would require at a minimum that any new codes that were passed, let's say over the next 5 years, that they are required to bring the facility up to that new standard. Because again, everyone acknowledges that the codes, I mean, it's just such a new technology, the codes are lagging behind. And that's normal.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Any
welcome.
other questions?
Mr. Smith, since you live in the area, I'm going to ask you a somewhat abstract hypothetical question. If the city had two bids for this land, one was for the terawatt charging station and the other was for a medical marijuana dispensary, which one would you as a neighbor prefer be put on the land? Assuming you would want neither, but which one seems less obnoxious to you?
Yeah, I would have to say neither one. I mean, neither one of them is a good fit for that neighborhood.
Well, I get that. The
Yeah,
reason I asked the
I
question
mean,
is,
that's not a reasonable
We
question
need,
because
we need to maintain control in the audience. No clapping.
No clapping during the presentation, please.
yeah, I mean, a reasonable, again, if somebody wants to, a chiropractor wants to build a shop there, or they want to build another small condo there. I mean, there's all types of things that would be a benefit to the neighborhood that belong in that area that I would be happy to,
the
to approve.
problem I had with a lot of the concerns, which while I share, the land is zoned commercial, which would allow gun shops, tattoo parlors, marijuana dispensaries, things that you might not like in the neighborhood and maybe shouldn't belong in the neighborhood. But the question we have is does the commercial zoning allow it? Which is why I asked the question that I did. Anyways.
And
I
I'm
don't know
going
if
to
we can
ask
answer.
Heather to come up because I know I have some questions for her, and I'm sure some other people do. And then
Looking at the map, that's a really good question. I don't think they could put a medical marijuana dispensary in there, given the proximity of the high school.
And the proximity of the
church.
church.
We already had a business that was near a marijuana facility. It got defeated because of a church.
But that goes
again,
that goes to setback. That doesn't go to zoning.
If-
I know, but it's a distinction with a difference.
Board Member Morrow, if I may point out, marijuana establishments are not allowed in the PCC1 zoning district that we're talking about here tonight.
Yeah.
So
And I don't know
It would have to be
any,
rezoned.
I mean, nothing else represents the risk of all of that incredible
Okay,
power.
one second. I have the table up, which I have been struggling to read
And
tonight.
I'm going to remind everyone that during the presentation, please do not clap. This is a hearing. So while I appreciate what people feel and that they're excited about certain comments, it does distract from what we're doing here. Thank you.
And distract from the recording abilities.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm seeing medical marijuana dispensary without cultivation is allowed with special restrictions in the PCC1.
Again, just look at this image. The amount of power to power every single home in this image, every single apartment, is focused into that little square. I mean, the risk is just off the scale. I don't know how to put that any other way. I mean, that's been my focus for my entire working career is risk mitigation, and this is just ridiculous.
So, and I just want to add, our ability to rule tonight is very limited. It's very specific. And so I kind of want to ask Heather a specific question that has to do with the law. And under the vehicle-based usage, they list things like taxi and ambulance dispatch and delivery services. So when thinking about those things specifically, because that's really where the focus is, he's saying, the zoning administrator is saying, they're similar to this vehicle charging. What's the difference? And if there's no difference and it's similar, what's the detrimental impact? Is it more detrimental to have the terawatt come in and have those charging stations and the autonomous vehicles than a taxi business?
Correct, and I think that's why it's difficult here tonight, is that the Smith's presentation goes to that detrimental aspect of it with the energy source that's being used at this site for this particular type of use. It's a lot different than if you had a taxi service located there with humans, taking the taxis in and out of the parcel. It's not purely dispatch, it's that energy source that's being proposed there, and that's the main use. The dispatch is incidental. The main use is that they're staying there for hours on end charging, and it's this driverless aspect that the zoning ordinance hasn't caught up to either, and that is that service is defined in the zoning ordinance as useful labor. And so labor is, again, that human element that's not here. There's no employment on this site other than perhaps one person that might be cleaning the vehicles, checking on them. There's not an actual dispatch person there or employees that are servicing the types of vehicles that you would have at any of those other type of vehicle services where the public comes in, they bring their vehicle to be serviced. There's labor that occurs. People pay for that labor. That's not occurring at this site. This is purely an energy refuel type station.
My understanding was there would be, not major, but at least a couple of employees there for the charging, for the cleaning at the site. So there'd be at least, a couple.
Right, but not related to dispatch like a taxi service would be, or any of those other type of vehicle-based type services.
Okay.
But isn't the service being provided that the vehicles are among the people who are going to be, if I live in the area and I want to call a Waymo to go to Mill Avenue because I don't want to drink and drive because that's bad. I don't want to wait for the Waymo to come from the industrial park on the other side of the airport. Don't I want just like if I called a yellow cab, I would want the yellow cab to be nearby so that it would, not waiting forever.
Right.
So isn't that the service element to it?
It could be, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, but when you have it in a PCC1 zoning district, that's more of a neighborhood type zoning district. If we go to the zoning map I had, can you pull up my slides one more time? Sorry about that. So the red, this is the zoning map, and the red area with the smaller area between the dots, so more dots on the screen, that's the planned commercial center general district. And similar with industrial type districts, those usually have arterial type connections. Planned commercial center neighborhood type uses can be located on those residential type streets, and that's why along Terrace Road you have these the PCC1 zoning districts along that residential street with service uses that are industrial in nature, which I think we can all agree that this has an industrial element to it, with the main use being that charging element and all that electricity on site. So with that and the amount of cars that are coming in and out of that site, it appears to be more of an industrial type use than the actual service of people calling for a Waymo or whatever vehicle type is going to be on this site, because the main use is the charging of it.
And I'd also like to make a comment. Just because the charging site is in an industrial area doesn't mean that you would wait longer for your Waymo. I mean, I'm assuming a Waymo would have 250 mile range. So it's not like it's going to pick up one person and then immediately go back to the charging station. It will be, more like an Uber. It will be staying in the neighborhood, and when you call it, your chances of it being near you are fairly good. It's not having to come from a long ways away on every single trip.
And I have one more question for Heather. So, and I just, because I want to understand what your argument is. So there's two things. The first is you're saying it's not similar to a taxi. It's not similar to a dispatch business, ambulance dispatch, a courier. That's not, hold on, that it's not different. It's not similar to that. If it is, if for some reason you make the concession that it is, there's also this other angle, which is the two things that we really can look at. It's more detrimental than those things because of the power, because of the charging and the danger.
You are correct. It's the autonomous nature of the vehicles as well, where with the Smiths, we're discussing the opinion from the gentleman who is with ASU and General Motors about how it's just too early to tell whether these types of vehicles are as safe as human drivers or not. We don't know that right now, especially not knowing the end user of the site. So those are the two arguments we're making, and that's consistent when you look at section 6-301 in the actual similar use ruling. In the first paragraph, it says that any use not appearing in this code which is similar to and not more detrimental than. So those are the 2 points we're trying to make, is it's not similar to those service uses and it is more detrimental than those uses.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Going to the concept of one of the ruling, which cites the fact that amongst the other similar uses are things like service stations. Looking at the location of the site, which is essentially somewhat buried within a neighborhood, not completely, but certainly to a certain extent. Are there examples, and I'd also throw this to Mr. Levesque or any of the staff, are there examples that they can cite of a service station in a similar location in a neighborhood that could be cited as saying, here, this is a service station and this is the same, ergo, it's the same and we should approve it? Because otherwise I've been looking at it and going, well, the zoning extends up to the corner of Terrace and Broadway. If I'm putting a service station someplace, I'd put it at the corner of Terrace and Broadway if I'm going to put it there, which I probably wouldn't because Terrace is not a good place to put it anyway. But if you go quarter mile to the west, you've got a couple of them. Are there any that can be cited that would meet that criteria? I can't think of any.
I'm not aware of any.
Yeah. I mean, and at least a service station would be of use to the immediate residents.
And I think that's
This
probably
is
something
not.
for staff.
This is,
But I
This is a
think
private facility.
if they could find one, it would be nice. And the only one I can think of actually is 68th Street north of McDowell in Scottsdale, about a half a mile north of McDowell, and that's the only service station I've ever seen in a neighborhood.
But 68th Street is a collector street, and Terrace is a local
I'm
street.
not saying that you should cite that as a justification. I'm saying that's the only one I can think of.
And Jerry, you had a question?
Yeah, I was, this is for Mr. Smith and also kind of staff. So I'm reading here, it looks like that Wendy Riddle, sorry if I'm mispronouncing, has been in contact with SRP. It looks like SRP has confirmed that there is sufficient capacity, which states the 6 megawatts that you pointed out. I'm just curious, when we're saying that there is sufficient capacity, does this mean like if the facility is at the maximum number of vehicles that need to be charged there? Because if so, my interpretation is that it wouldn't require that level of power at all times. That would be at max capacity or potentially even beyond. I'm not sure if that was outlined anywhere in the site plan. I wasn't able to see.
was that a question for me, or I'm sorry?
Yes, you, Todd, or even staff, I don't know if they have any insight on that.
I mean, I believe Terawatt has said that that the site would typically operate at about 1.5 megawatts of power on an average. But, you know, if you did have autos in all of those stalls simultaneously charging, you would take the full 6 megawatts. And, you know, I haven't been in contact with SRP, but, you know, if they, again, you know, you think of that picture about how many homes you can run with 6 megawatts. I don't know how much excess power they had available in that neighborhood. But I can be pretty much assured that if that facility goes in, the amount of excess power that's available is going to go down to almost zero. And that's could potentially lead, to blackouts and who knows what in our neighborhood because, a minor overload, they will not have the capacity now to pick that back up.
Okay. And just, Wendy hasn't had a chance to present. She's going to present next. So if there are any other questions.
I have one quick question. This would maybe be directed toward Heather or anybody, or you guys if you know. Has there been any of I know there's a limited amount of cities that Waymo operates out of. Has anything like this been put anywhere else? And is there any impact that is known or that could be revealed as to how that worked out or where it was zoned under or anything?
Yeah, there's a similar facility in Santa Monica. And if you look in this pamphlet that I handed out, there's actually a couple of videos that you can watch. The residents that are near that are just in an absolute uproar because of all of the noise and the traffic that the site generated. It was operating 24/7. The people couldn't sleep. There was noise continuously. Santa Monica told Waymo that they could not operate the facility at night. So Waymo sued Santa Monica, and Santa Monica has in turn sued Waymo. So that's what you're looking at with this facility. It's a virtual rubber stamp of what Terawatt's proposing. And I encourage you, when this is over, go to this page, just scan those 2 QR codes and you'll see the videos from Santa Monica. And you can read all about the ongoing lawsuits that it's invoked.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And at that, I'm going to have Wendy come up and present.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the board, Wendy Riddell with the law firm Barry Riddell, 6750 East Camelback. My pleasure to be here this evening on behalf of Terawatt. I do want to bring the conversation back. You're hearing a lot about the specific proposal that we talked to the DRC about and then has been appealed to the City Council. But that's really not why we are here today. I think, Madam Chair, you recognize that. We are here regarding the similar use ruling. It has nothing to do with our site. It is not specific to our site. You need to look at this about how it would apply anywhere in Tempe, which is the ruling that was given. And the ruling really comes down to a 2-pronged test. And the 2-pronged test, the very first part, is there any use not appearing in the code which is similar to? So here, there is taxi dispatch, and frankly, when we originally started the application, the reason there wasn't a similar use ruling is everyone assumed that it was taxi dispatch. The neighbors raised this issue, so we are here in front of you. But city staff then determined that a charging center for a private fleet of autonomous vehicles providing ride-hailing services is similar to a vehicle-based service or a taxi dispatch, are comparable vehicle-related uses in the PCC1 district. This is what taxi dispatch looks like today. This is a modern-day taxi dispatch. Oh, I have never been accused of being too quiet, but yes, I can do that. And here again, you look directly in the city zoning ordinance. This is what is there today when you talk about PCC1 with a use permit, vehicle-based services, which include courier, delivery services, taxi, and ambulance dispatch. So the city interpretation, a charging center for a fleet of autonomous vehicles providing ride-share services operates much like a traditional taxi service. But the cars instead are fully autonomous and don't have a human driver. You have here, this is Waymo, by the way, spoiler alert, it's Waymo that would ultimately be at this site. We're shocked. I can tell. The world's first autonomous, they call it a ride-hailing service, right? Taxi dispatch. By the way, there's other names, there's other competitors out there. You want to look at Tesla. They call it a robo-taxi. Literally, the word taxi is in the name. So then you say, all right, how is a taxi dispatch the same as a ride-hailing dispatch? And we really have broken it down in the most simple way that we can. There's ride booking. A passenger orders a ride for a taxi dispatch, same as a ride-hailing dispatch. There's automated dispatching, happens with taxis, happens with ride-hailings. There's GPS tracking. There's driver management, there's analytics and reporting. These things are the same for both. And by the way, there are employees on site. There are employees that oversee this facility as well, much like a taxi dispatch. It is a taxi dispatch. So then you say, okay, I have to look at the second prong of that test, that it's not more detrimental than the uses permitted herein. So we looked at service station and repair permitted in PCC 1. Frankly, Board Member Morrow, you came up with some that are even better than we did. I mean, gun sales, liquor sales, tattoo, all of those are permitted. And I would suggest to you, more impactful to this neighborhood than a fleet of vehicles charging. And I would also suggest to you that when you look at a service station, when you look at repair, these are even less intense use than those type of vehicle-related uses. You'll see that we're similar automotive uses permitted in the PCC district with a use permit. Again, commercial parking structure, a car wash. If you've gone to a city council hearing, you'll see, hundreds of people showing up, concerns about a car wash. Vehicle repair, Jiffy Lube, brakes, discount tire, indoor-outdoor car sales and rental, service station. Again, we are not more detrimental than those uses when you look narrowly at that test. Again, not more detrimental than a service station. Pumps, storage tanks, liquid fuel, lubricants dispensed directly into motor vehicles. It has tanks of gas. We've heard of the environmental concerns, the concerns people have with service stations. There's washing, polishing, inspections that occur there. There's often a retail component where you have people that could loiter. You've got pedestrian traffic or additional traffic that would occur. These gas stations, I would suggest to you, are even more intense. Again, you don't look at the specific site. You look at what is the test that is within the zoning ordinance. I would also respectfully suggest to you it's not more detrimental than vehicle repair. In automotive parts, retail sales, vehicle service, you've got fluid changes, brake repair, brake service, replacement of parts. All of those, I would respectfully suggest, are more detrimental, more intense than the dispatch ride-hailing service. I would also suggest to you that this is not an industrial use. This is a list I will show you of what the industrial uses are within the city. You've got cement and paving material, gas distribution, junkyards, manufacturing, machine shops, marijuana establishments, marijuana testing, dispensaries, recycling. Those are the industrial uses. This is not an industrial use. And then before I reach a conclusion, there were two other points I think that we're focused on as part of Heather's discussion. The first was the issue of power. I think they're suggesting to you this is more intense because of power. I would also point out to you that the same sort of car charging can go within everybody's homes. Frankly, I have one in my own home. They are everywhere. That does not create a more intense situation. She brought up the idea, and I want to read the quote actually, that because this isn't a neighborhood service, which I initially would take dispute with because this is very much a service. I say this as my son is being driven home from tutoring this evening by a Waymo, so thank you very much, certainly providing a service. But I would also suggest to you, when you read the rest of that PCC 1, when you look at the overall purpose, she talked about encouraging trip reduction. That's exactly what this type of facility does. By having autonomous vehicles close to communities, it reduces trips throughout Tempe, an overarching goal of Tempe. I would like to complete the quote where it talks about, well, this needs to be neighborhood servicing. Community, this needs to be servicing our neighborhood, and therefore it's inappropriate. But if you look at the PCC1 language, it says, services and entertainment uses oriented to serve the needs of the neighborhood, community, or the metropolitan region. Exactly squarely within what we are doing today. So again, I would encourage you, Madam Chair, members of the board, to bring yourself back to the quote, to the test that's in front of this board today. If you look at, I would suggest that you should side with staff and their interpretation that any use not appearing in the code which is similar to, here we are akin to a taxi dispatch. Again, ride-hailing service, robo-taxi. It's just a modern-day taxi dispatch. And the second, that we're not more detrimental to the other uses permitted herein. And I will tell you, service station, vehicle repair, but take your pick. Gun shop, liquor sales, all of those are permitted. And so I would conclude by respectfully suggesting you support the city's similar use ruling and that the appeal should be denied. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
I do have a question on this. In both sides of this, you made excellent presentations, but I would say that, yes, we are bound by a rule of law and an application of code, but the fact of the matter here is the purpose and applicability of this never intended driverless cars. And we're talking about a technology that is so new, that is unproven, that is completely untested. And I don't know that I agree or disagree with its similarity to taxi, or if it does encourage trip reduction. I mean, Waymos are parked there because they want to make trips and take people around, not necessarily exclusive to the neighborhood. But I just wanted to kind of put that out there that while, yes, we are bound by a specific interpretation of where this sits with the zoning code, there's also a responsibility to look at the situation holistically, because the fact of the matter is, these things exist like nowhere. I mean, Arizona was one of the first test cities to drive these things. So, I think that we should all think carefully and, weigh all of the information in front of us before making a decision. It would be irresponsible not to think about everything.
Certainly, Madam Chair, Board Member Dalton, of course, you've got to consider the information that's in front of you. I'm just suggesting to you that your focus is rather narrow based on the test provided in the ordinance.
Fair enough.
Any other questions?
I'm intrigued by your idea that the decision that we make today has to be generalized across the entire city, when in fact it relates to a specific decision by the Development Review Committee, I believe. Let me finish.
Certainly.
Thank you. And yes, it is a precedent setting in a certain sense, but this ties to a particular decision of a particular body and a particular decision made by a zoning administrator, and therefore we're not asked to make a general decision regarding the PCC1 district across the city. We're asked to make a decision about this particular similar use.
Madam Chair, Board Member Miller, respectfully, I disagree. You're not being asked whether or not a use permit at this specific site is appropriate. You're being asked whether or not, what category is appropriate for vehicle fleet charging. What is most similar, where does it make most sense in the zoning ordinance? And frankly, it will be used in the future, not just at this site, at other sites. And if you're concerned that what I'm telling you is inaccurate, you've got counsel here in the room. I would encourage you to have staff and have counsel come up and share their thoughts on that same issue.
Any other questions? Mara?
So I'll tip my hand and say, I think you got part one of the step of the test. The more detrimental part is where I'm very hung up. And in addition to the concerns raised by the appellant about power transformer noise and car fires, I've watched a lot of the videos of autonomous cars. I've seen the video of the Waymos in the parking lot in San Francisco, where they all start beeping and honking at each other and then honking at the other ones. And my other concern is being a 24-hour station, unlike a gas station, which is going to be less trafficked at 1 or 2 in the morning, or a nightclub that might have to stop selling alcohol at 2 in the morning. Isn't this going to be more busy and have more noise pollution in the evening hours when it's going to be more annoying to people?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioner Morrow. So I want to step back a little bit, because the things you're talking about is, are they going to be beeping at each other? Are they going to be making noise? Those are actually specific commitments and stipulations that we put into the use permit that talk about, what they're allowed to do on site, how quiet they have to be on site, how they have to operate. I would also suggest to you that ultimately you have less traffic here than you would a typical service station. I have statistics that we can share with that. And the noise that you have at night, again, there's no car wash. I mean, we've actually specifically stipulated in the use permit that we cannot exceed the ambient noise level. That goes to those standards and the stipulations that are in that specific use permit.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
And I believe we have Casper. Yeah, Chris Jasper presenting for the city.
Good evening, Chair, members of the Board of Adjustment. My name is Chris Jasper. I'm a senior planner here with the City of Tempe, and I'll be presenting this evening's appeal. So what you have before you is an appeal of the zoning administrator's similar use ruling that a proposed autonomous vehicle charging facility is analogous to a vehicle-based service, parentheses, dispatch in the PCC1 zoning district. You have some context for the site that the appellant and original applicant have brought up, have shown, so I'll kind of skim over that. But a little bit of history about how we got to this point. So there were a series of rulings over the past few months, the first of which was a decision by the Development Review Commission on October 28th of 2025. They voted 4-2 to approve a use permit to allow a vehicle-based service at this location for the autonomous vehicle charging facility. That decision was then appealed to the City Council by Dukes Law P LLC. That appeal is pending and anticipated to be heard later this month, or next month, excuse me. I'm getting ahead of myself. It is still February. On November 21st, the zoning administrator issued this similar use ruling that did identify and confirm that it is analogous to a vehicle-based service. That was issued on November 21st and then appealed on December 5th of 2025, and that is the appeal before you today. So just to kind of quickly go through the zoning administrator's opinion, again, that has been discussed a little bit by both the appellant and original applicant, but it was determined by the zoning administrator that this operation was similar to and not more detrimental than what our code calls a vehicle-based service, and it refers to, in parentheses, taxi dispatch, ambulance dispatch, et cetera. And that et cetera is actually in the code, or comparable vehicle-related uses in the PCC1 zoning district. Operational characteristics that were taken into consideration with this opinion included the fact that there were no vehicle repair activities proposed, it was not intended for public use, and that the fleet vehicles were to provide ride-sharing services to customers. And as noted by both the appellant and original applicant, it was determined by the zoning administrator that it functions much like a typical taxi service, but with fully autonomous vehicles and no human driver. I provided the site plan for reference, although that is not necessarily the topic of discussion this evening. The appellant held that the similar use ruling was incorrectly determined and that the autonomous vehicle charging facility is more analogous to a regional service use or industrial use found in the PCC2, city center, RCC, or industrial zoning districts, and is therefore not appropriate for the PCC1 zoning district, in addition to the arguments that they made during their presentations. So this was pulled from their letter when we received it. So the board's role this evening is, per Arizona revised statutes, to hear and decide appeals in which it is alleged there is an error in an order, requirement, or decision made by the zoning administrator in the enforcement of a zoning ordinance adopted pursuant to ARS. So what that means is that any decision that you make, if you choose to approve the appeal and overturn the similar use ruling, that would be based on a finding that there was a fact or error, and with the finding that that use is not similar to a vehicle-based service in the zoning district. If you do decide or vote to approve the appeal, the board must then determine what the use is similar to and not more detrimental to as identified within the code. So we are looking for that specificity. If this is not a vehicle-based service, if it is not a taxi dispatch site, what is it? We need that guidance. On the other hand, a denial of the appeal would uphold the zoning administrator's similar use ruling, thereby rendering that a use permit is required, and a continuance would result in the board hearing this case at the next available hearing. I did want to address some of the discussion previously with the appellant and original applicant regarding the applicability of this ruling. It is, the zoning administrator's purview that when a similar use ruling is made, it is not specific to a specific site, but rather to classifying a land use category within the zoning district at large. So this would be used to, this would be applied to all PCC1 sites throughout the entire city, regardless of context. As such, the similar use ruling is itself location agnostic. What we are looking at is solely the use characteristics as compared to what we have defined in our code. So we have vehicle-based service, we have taxi dispatch called out in our code, and that was the point of reference when making the evaluation. I would also note that some of the use characteristics that have been discussed are pursuant to the use permit request that was submitted and was approved by the DRC and is being appealed to the DRC. So we are trying to keep this particular hearing focused entirely on the definitional component rather than the specific use characteristics and surrounding context. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions, should you have any. Ryan Levesque, Deputy Director of Planning, is also present. He's the zoning administrator, and he can also answer specific questions about the opinion.
Any questions? Any questions?
Yeah, I have one. I'm just curious, when, I know we're talking about the appeal, but I want to zoom out just a little bit. So for the PCC1, the planned commercial center neighborhood, correct? So I understand that's the zoning. What is is there kind of like an overall goal of this type of zoning? Is it kind of, like, my understanding when looking at the Tempe zoning code, it's somewhat similar to mixed use. Am I interpreting that correctly, or would you say there's kind of a different goal of this type of zoning?
Thank you, Chair, Board Member Samishka. The PCC1 zoning district is the planned commercial zoning district. It is intended to serve and provide a lot of employment services, offices, a wide range of retail uses. The land use table is pretty extensive, and I think we've noted a lot of the uses that are allowed within that area.
Yeah, I understand the land use. I was just curious about the actual zoning. Like, what is the goal of a PCC1 area? Like, a mixed use I can understand. And again, my understanding was, when reading through the code, it sounded somewhat similar to me as like a mixed use zoning. So I just wanted to make sure that I was interpreting that correctly.
Yeah, the other definitions we have for PCC 1 and 2 is a planned commercial center. So it required a planning or phasing of commercial development within a concentrated area that shares parking and uses in a similar area. PCC 1 is typically a smaller site. PCC 2 is generally larger. Both zoning districts has very similar land use, share very similar land uses. I don't think actually might not be one land use that's different from one another. The only difference is PCC 1 has a 30-foot rear yard setback and PCC 2 has a 40-foot rear yard setback.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Do you have a question? I have a question. Again, I'm kind of hung up on the applicability here. How exactly would 44 spaces for autonomous vehicles promote economic, social vitality, encourage trip reduction and pedestrian circulation as an alternative to driving? Like, that's just something I'm trying to wrap my head around.
And where are you reading this reference? Is the
Section
statement?
3201A, it's the purpose of the PCC, PCC1 classification. It says the commercial and mixed-use districts are established to provide a mixture of complementary land use, including retail, offices, commercial services, public universities, public university-related use, civic use, and housing. These districts are intended to create economic and social vitality and to encourage trip reduction and encourage pedestrian circulation as an alternative to driving and provide employment and housing options.
Yeah, so I would think what you're describing and reading is a generalization of what the type of land uses that are allowed within those zoning district classifications. Within the land use permit category, that are list of uses that are permitted by right, meaning there's no need for a public process. There's land uses that are permitted subject to use permit, such as the one we're currently talking about that requires a public hearing to evaluate, is it appropriate for the location and area? And then there are factors that have to be evaluated based on that use, based on that location. And then there are a list of land uses, obviously, that are specifically not permitted within those zoning district categories. And all those contexts are taken into consideration whenever we have a new land use. And I guess I'll bring up the data centers. This was a new recent change in our code last year, where data centers were actually allowed in our commercial districts, and where we did some further research and discussions about bringing the data center process forward. It did not determine through a similar use ruling, but we actually had to make a code text amendment and justification to make changes in land use that had to be adopted by an ordinance process. And not the context of what we're talking about here, which is a similar use ruling where we have a specific list of identified land use categories and trying to find a land use that might have different uses, different characteristics, and to find a match that is more similar to that land use that is being discussed or evaluated today.
Thank you.
So, as I said earlier, I'm pretty convinced this is a similar use, but your two-page decision didn't spend a lot of time on the second prong of the test, why it's not more detrimental than any of the, I guess one of my questions is it more detrimental than any of the uses or more detrimental than the similar use you defined it as? I maybe should have brought that up earlier.
I would find it as not more detrimental than the land uses we found under the service category for a vehicle-based service, courier, delivery service, taxi, or ambulance dispatch. All those share some similarities in providing distribution of vehicles from a designated site and locations where vehicles can be stored, serviced, and provided, which typically don't have a point of customer service at those locations. We do have a on-site, there is requirements or a portion of the process where there is some service being provided at the location. My understanding is in the building identified where there'll be a operator there for the site. But very similar to these services where there is a point of dispatch where they leave the destination site and then come back for their servicing. And that's the reason why we've identified those categories. And the fact that there is a use permit process where there is an opportunity to evaluate the purpose, whether or not you agree with the land use today in that site or location is part of that public hearing process to get the public involved in that. And that'll be an item that has been discussed with the DRC and could potentially be discussed with City Council upon the decision you render tonight.
And I appreciate that. And I think I agree with you that this is very similar to a taxi service, but there are some additional detriments that have been identified and that I can imagine that would be different from a taxi service. Massive amounts of electricity, danger of lithium fires, the noise from robot cars that still need some work done on them. You're gonna have a lot of small robot, or you're gonna have a lot of robot cars in a small space, and they, as I've seen, honk at each other, which could be very annoying. And I think different from a taxi service or a gas station with humans that sort of understand the subtleties that you don't smash your horn at 3 a.m. So isn't that extra detriment part of our process of evaluating whether or not this should be considered a similar use?
Chair Foy, board member Foy, board member Morrow, I think what you're looking at doing is you're looking at an analysis of whether or not the use permit criteria in a certain site location is appropriate or not. So we didn't go into that depth of detail and determine the land use, because those are aspects of the use permit process that gets evaluated. Does the use permit have certain characteristics that might have concerns for how the use permit is being utilized at that site location?
I kind of disagree. I mean, I really, as I indicated earlier, I'm not as concerned with this specific location as I am about the really the commercial or mixed-use zoning in general, but I think the potential detriments of autonomous vehicle charging station would apply no matter who their neighbor was, if they were in any of the PCC zoning districts in the city. If we identify an additional detriment, even if I agree if it's a vehicle-based service, this is a vehicle-based service that has more potential nuisances than other vehicle-based services. That's why I'm hesitant to approve it.
Chair Foy, Board Member Morrow, I think the concerns that you have identified are associated more with the type of vehicle rather than the actual use characteristics. Because a taxi dispatch service staffed by human beings 24/7, utilizing electric vehicles with charging stations, would fundamentally be the same as what is proposed by an autonomous vehicle charging, or by this facility. Insofar as it's full, you might have more humans, fully staffed. You still have the same number of vehicles using the same amount of electricity, conducting the same number of trips. But if the primary difference is the autonomous vehicles, I think that's where the similar use ruling is intended to capture those characteristics. What is fundamentally different between a traditional taxi stand with people versus autonomous vehicles. And so that's why I think that's the genesis of the similar use ruling.
Madam Chair? First of all, you're making a determination that this is a similar use. And I can understand that, and to a limited degree I can go along with it, but only to a limited degree, because I am not convinced that this is in fact a similar use. And I think we have to, despite what you're saying, Mr. Jasper, autonomous vehicles are not taxis in the same sense that taxis driven by humans are taxis. And you say, well, it's a vehicle-based service. Yes, well, they're all vehicles, so that's a starting point. But they act differently, they perform differently, they are operated differently, and the service itself is operated differently. A taxi dispatch service is essentially operated by humans, even though some in New York City, for example, are largely app-driven at this point. But most of the ride-sharing services that we're talking about are completely autonomous at this point. You call it up on your phone, they show up when they do, and it has little or nothing to do with taxi dispatching. This service, on the other hand, is an industrial use, in my opinion. You are preparing vehicles to go out and perform a service, which if they're not prepared, if they're not charged, they're not going anywhere. That's an industrial use in this facility. I have felt that ever since I saw this, and I continue to feel it. And despite Mr. Levesque's ruling, I think he's wrong on that. I think it's not a similar situation, and I am loath to support it.
I was going to ask, so I kind of am like Board Member Merrill. I think that it falls under the taxi. I think that similar use is fine. I'm more concerned with the detrimental side of it. And so what is your analysis with detrimental? Is it more detrimental? Like, I don't understand what you're saying when you've answered this question before. Why is it not more detrimental than a repair shop or a service station or a gun shop or anything like that? I mean, there are serious significant concerns with an autonomous machine, right? It drives by computer. What if there's a glitch, right? That's not the same thing as a taxi driven by a person, right? Or a car driven by the person. So I kind of want you guys to address that, because that's, for me, the big issue here.
So yeah, Chair Foy, one other aspect of looking at this is, in some of the ancillary components of this in question, was rather than the charging station itself, but the act of the autonomous use, autonomous vehicles. We do have charging stations that are permitted by right in public facilities locations. We have the Tempe Public Library. Other commercial facilities have the ability, the Arizona Mills Mall has charging stations there. They're service to the public. Very similar to how you call for a taxi. I can pull up an app, have a request for Yellow Cab to come directly to my house. I can have a request to Lyft, Uber, come directly to my house, the same way that I could have a Waymo vehicle come pick me up and provide that service. We look at the autonomous element of the factor as something that is currently controlled and regulated by the state of Arizona. The city of Tempe has allowed it as a legal land use that is allowed to drive safely within our community streets. It's been evaluated. Certainly there are questions as to what risk factors come into play. We've had the site reviewed and vetted through our internal process that includes building safety, life safety, fire department, and no major concerns with the parameters of the site plan proposed for the site, other than what we typically are required to do and conduct that type of service for any other similar use that would require this location there. And that's where we feel comfortable with the decision that was made on that respect.
I have another question. So in PPC 1, you're allowed to have public parking lot services that have charging stations. So, for example, let's say there are 30 charging stations at a lot. That could go there, right?
By right, yes.
Okay. So it would be the same issue as what the concerns are that were brought up, and that might be more of a use issue that would be
Correct,
before
yeah.
the city council. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, someone could set up an operation to have vehicle charging that's open to the public. Same equipment, same services provided there. It's just not being used for dispatch.
So the real,
Yeah, this is definitely a challenging call, and I'm certainly trying to wrap my head around it, because I don't know that I would say that it should be zoned industrially, but I'm not saying that it shouldn't. But then as I read more of this and I see planned commercial centers, PCC 1, PCC 2, the first line is the PCC districts are for neighborhood. And then it says in brackets PCC 1. And I don't know how 44 parking spaces for cars to be parked, charged, and used, they would clearly be outside of the neighborhood. I don't know where that fits into the intent, but then as I scurried through the table, vehicle service centers, they fall within that zoning classification, but then none of those have lithium batteries that could, explode and burn in landfills for 3 days either. So it's definitely challenging, but yeah, I don't know. How does this benefit the neighborhood? How is this presence here? Because it says PCC 1 neighborhood. How does that really enhance the neighborhood in any way? And is it required to?
Chair, Board Member Dalton, I think to kind of go into the minutia of the language in our zoning code, the neighborhood sort of component is relative to the scale, right? As Ryan noted, what the primary differences are between PCC 1 and PCC 2 are basically the amount of land allocated to that zoning district and the size of the parcels therein. So PCC 2 tends to see larger strip center retail and commercial activity, whereas the PCC 1 tends to have smaller lots like this one. And so that's the primary distinction between those two particular zoning districts. I know there were other components of your question, and I'm not recalling them immediately. So if you could remind me.
No, I mean, that was the general meat of it, was how does 44 spaces, how is that align with the neighborhood? How is that positively contributing to the neighborhood? The other part of what I said about the industrial uses, that's more, I'm kind of conflicted, and I just acknowledge that this was a hard call to make.
Yeah, and Board Member Dalton, what I would say is the similar use ruling is not necessarily capturing the sort of philosophical component of it so much as it is a strict one-to-one comparison or as one-to-one as possible of the proposed land use as compared to other uses that are allowed within that zoning district, which have been, I think, noted.
Okay, I mean, you answered my question.
Okay.
Kevin, you had a question?
Yeah, so something I think I realized is someone could put a parking lot there and charge by the hour. That's a permissible use, and they could put 35 electric car charging stations there. So what this really comes down to is it's going to be robot cars instead of just open to anybody with a Tesla who wants to park there.
Not open to the public, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
There's one down here.
Oh, Katie?
I might come at this from a different direction, and maybe you can help me clarify this a bit, in the sense that the vehicle-based service that is being provided, which is what this use is under, is downstream of Terawatt providing its own services. So in a way, Terawatt is providing a service to Waymo. Waymo is providing the vehicle-based service. And in such a way, maybe even the dispatching or the service itself is technically taking place in Mountain View, California, autonomously out of state. So I'm getting caught up in the service element as it orients to the public in the neighborhood itself rather than out of California, and Terawatt instead providing the service to Waymo.
Chair, Board Member Cross, I think the response to that is the service itself is what a citizen of the city of Tempe could request and utilize the site for, which is ride-hailing services. So that is the service at hand that we're kind of evaluating in this process and with the use permit itself.
Thank you.
And you're right, both of the components of the Terawatt service and the Waymo are needed together to create this use functionality that's being presented to us today.
I'm good.
Robert?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, because it's actually a very good point. This isn't actually a vehicle-based service for the benefit of the public. It's actually a quote, vehicle-based service for the benefit of Waymo. And if Waymo provides an indirect benefit by virtue of the fact that it can provide rides, then one could maybe come back and say, well, this particular facility provides an indirect benefit in that regard. But to say that it's a direct benefit or an actual vehicle-based service misrepresents it. And then I want to come back to one other thing really quickly, because it's been mentioned that this is a decision that impacts the whole concept of the PCC1 zoning district. But yet in reading through Mr. Levesque's findings, there are specific mentions in a number of places to the above address, to the business located at 2105 South Terrace Road, and other specific mentions of this particular site. And I think to try and tell us that we can't consider the site as part of the decision, we have to think of it globally, is a misrepresentation. And I know you're shaking your head, Ryan, but we're going to disagree on that. So.
I'll gratefully disagree with you, Mr. Miller.
Any other questions?
Chair Foy?
Yes.
Just want to make one more clarifying statement.
Sure,
So,
thank you.
in reiterating in the zoning development code section 6-301, in order to identify a similar use ruling, I have to find a similar use within the categories of the land uses identified within here in order to create that similar use rulings. If the argument is should be in an industrial land use, then I have to look to the industrial land use categories that what is similar to this land use. Is it an adult-oriented business? Is it auto body repair? Is it the data center? Is it a manufacturing facility, bio-research testing labs? Is it a large recycling centers? And none of those land uses
Fuel
are
distribution.
similar to the land uses identified within the PCC 1 district.
I'd point you to fuel distribution. I think that's, I mean, electricity's kind of a fuel. I remember having a tax case about this that I don't really want to think about right now.
Yeah.
So going back to what Mr. Jasper said at the very beginning, and I'll tip my hand again, I think I've now flip-flopped. I think you've convinced me on the detrimental and Dr. Miller has maybe flipped me on the services. But, so I don't know where I am. If we vote to grant the appeal, or if the board votes to grant the appeal, what's the second thing we have to do? Then do we have to then identify? Okay, so we have to identify it, not Ryan.
Board Member Morrow, I'll put that on the record. That is correct.
Okay, well, I would point, if we go that way, I would point us towards fuel distributing station, but I'm open to alternatives if we get there. Although, Ryan, if you have thoughts in the meantime, and we come to that,
Chair Floyd, Board Member Morrow, I just want to identify that the classification you're referring to is fueling station gasoline bulk plant. So in this case, we're talking about liquid fuels in a bulk plant situation, not your typical gas station, or this is a concentrated bulk plant for fueling distribution that's not typically open to the public, but.
Yeah, and that's what I was imagining, a place where the tanker trucks get the gasoline and take it to the gas stations. Maybe not what the zoning code writers were thinking when we started talking about auto cars, but I don't have a better one. You got a better one, Dr. Miller?
No,
this is the cart way before the horse, but
I'm just saying that's why we have similar use distinctions.
Are there any other questions at this point? All right, I have one question, just because I know that, we have the public comment coming up. Could you please explain the difference between what we're addressing here today and what is going to be addressed in the city council with the appeal?
So we have two appeals before you, or not before you, before us, that was a filed appeal to the similar use rulings and an appeal on the use permit decision made by the DRC. We do first, the reason why we're having this hearing before we're having the city council is we need to know what is the appropriate land use for this. If there is an approval for the use permit or overturning of the opinion and there is no use permit, there's no process with the city council to be heard for that presentation. We need to decide first and foremost what is the use ruling. If there is a use permit process that's still in play potentially, about another land use that still needs a use permit, then we can still have that appeal hearing with the city council. If it's overturned and the use is not allowed within the zoning district, say for example, then we don't have a use permit process to proceed with.
Okay, so, and I want to clarify. So if we decide that the zoning administration was wrong, then city council doesn't hear the appeal because it's moot.
Depending on what your direction for similar use ruling is,
Okay.
and what category that is, and where that's allowed.
But if we agree with the zoning administrator and deny the appeal, then it would go before the city council, and that would be the
Then we'd
use.
move to the next step, which
That
would
would
be
be appeal, the
that
actual
appeal.
use permit. And this is really just narrowly about the similar use decision that you made.
Correct.
Okay. Any other?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And I think at this point, we are moving on to online public comments. And my understanding is, Jennifer, you're going to.
Yes, Chair. I am going to request that Paul Wolf unmute himself.
Paul Wolf, are you there?
I'm here.
Go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I have a few comments related to things that I have heard.
Can you speak closer to the
Your mic's on.
Can you please speak closer to the mic? We're having difficulty hearing you, Paul.
Ew. They can't hear you.
Paul, are you there? We'll come back to Paul. Paul, if you could try to figure out what's going on with your mic. If we could go to the next online public comment.
Yes, the next person I will unmute is Talia Wolf.
Talia Wolf, are you there?
1 second.
I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
We can hear you. Go ahead. Wonderful. Good evening, board members. I am a 20-year Tempe resident and an Arizona native. In 2016 and 2018, I ran for Congress because I wanted to bring science into government. I've always supported technology and scientific advancement. But I first wanted to start with, I personally worked as a dispatcher in Tempe for multiple years. And I need to be really clear, vehicles in service rarely came to the dispatch center itself. They went to service stations or repair sites. We had 6 to 10 dispatchers working in the office building. And this is how most dispatching centers work. Just like 911 dispatchers, the ambulances are not at the dispatch center. They're found at the fire department and managing agencies. The comparison between a taxi or a 911 dispatch office and a terawatt charging depot with hundreds of vehicles throughout the day is not a remotely realistic comparison. And it's surprising to me that this continues to be used as a justification. But I've been really fortunate to live all over Tempe, but I am now in this neighborhood between McClintock and Broadway and Verlia Drive and Terrace because I suffered a brain injury and I need to be in a noise controlled environment. I used to be more close to the university because I love that culture and that environment, but I needed to be where we recognize noise levels for the flights overhead and really that we understand how noise can impact human lives. Now let's look at the complaints Waymo is already facing. In Santa Monica, California, residents near one of the current sites reported nonstop noise at levels between 97 and 112 decibels. These levels are comparable to loud concerts and nightclubs. Where does this noise come from? All electric vehicles require federal mandated sound that accompanies the vehicle. They are not noiseless and far from it. Tempe would never allow a concert venue or nightclub to run 24 hours a day inside one of the few remaining pockets of affordable housing in central Tempe. So why would we allow an industrial charging depot to do the same? If we have industrial zones available, then we should use them and not place an industrial operation in one of the safest and most stable neighborhoods in the city. We keep hearing the number 44 parking spaces. Based on the actual operational pattern, this is closer to 44 vehicles per hour, and this is nearly up to 1,000 vehicles per day. The question of difference comes up, the question of the difference in zoning is kept up often. Zoning has not kept up with technological advancements. These battery systems are incomparable to anything zoning anticipated. Even the city's own rules acknowledge this. This zoning specifically limits data centers. If we draw any parallel, that's where it should come.
I'm sorry, your time is up.
No worries, I tried.
Thanks.
Thank you, I appreciate you. I was opposed if that wasn't clear.
Yes. And I just, again, want to remind everybody who's making public comment, whether online or in person, you only have 3 minutes to comment. Please keep it brief and to the point. Jennifer, can we have our next person?
It's going to be, we're going back to Paul. She's
Okay.
resetting the timer.
Okay. Paul, are you there?
Are you able to hear?
We can hear you.
Yes, I am. Are you able to hear? Oh, thank you very much for bearing
Go
with me and my audience. I feel like my comments are related to the zoning issue, and that it sounded like part of that zoning decision was that it whether or not it was detrimental or of a service to the community. One of the which is I struggle to see how this provides an additional service for rideshare to the community when there's already an abundance of these vehicles in our neighborhoods today without that additional station or resource for them. Another one is safety. As somebody that has recently started doing Uber as a income opportunity, I've witnessed the way some of these autonomous vehicles handle in unpredictable situations that they're not programmed for, particularly recently at the airport where maps indicated that there was an accident ahead and traffic was heavily backed up because it was a high volume time and the vehicle just didn't know what to do. So it just kind of gave up in the middle of a busy roadway. I'm also, as a resident of this direct neighborhood, concerned about its energy consumption, how that will impact, summer usage, potential blackouts. Very concerned what what kind of assurances they can offer to ensure that the noise pollution or power availability will not be impacted. As far as a public use, I definitely feel like it identifies more as a fueling center as it is providing a fuel for those vehicles. And then lastly, as far as, it hit close to home when the gentleman spoke about the fire risk to that, using that type of energy and that amount of energy. As an owner of an electric vehicle, there's a pending recall that, due to fire safety to those batteries, that terrifies me just with one vehicle. To imagine 40 of them at one time definitely has a potential risk to that community. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the only one. So at this time, we will do in person. I have a stack, and we'll start with the first person. And again, just remember, you have 3 minutes. I have Joe Forte.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Tempe Board of Adjustments. My name is Joe Forte. I'm a proud Tempe resident, and I currently serve on the city's Development Review Commission. I sat through the entire presentation of this proposed autonomous EV charging station, and I was one of the few commissioners who voted in opposition. Tonight, I'm here to respectfully ask you to reject the zoning administrator's similar use determination that this facility is akin to a taxi dispatch office. After I graduated from ASU, I worked right here in Tempe for Discount Cab on Apache Drive. I know exactly what a taxi dispatch station looks like and how it operates. Drivers pull in, they drop off their paperwork, they wash the car, they gas up or swap vehicles, and they head back out. That's it. It's a brief, low-intensity turnover. No industrial scale equipment, no constant humming of high voltage chargers, no fleet of 30 driverless cars cycling in and out around the clock. This proposal is nothing like that. This is an industrial-sized charging depot designed for 30 autonomous vehicles operating 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. These are not the quiet home chargers you plug in overnight in your driveway. These are high-capacity, high-heat, high-traffic stations with vehicles arriving and departing nonstop. That is fundamentally different intensity of use. The zoning administrator ruled this use is not more detrimental than the permanent service stations or vehicle repair shops in this district. With respect, that ruling cannot stand. Service stations and repair shops have predictable daytime peaks and close at night. This facility never sleeps. It will generate constant noise, constant light, constant traffic, and constant heat from banks of industrial chargers operating around the clock right in the middle of a neighborhood-adjacent commercial zone. This is simply no true commercial comparative for this scale and intensity of autonomous vehicles charging in our zoning code, which is exactly why the similar use shortcut is inappropriate here. Chair and members, I urge you to set aside the taxi dispatch analogy. It does not hold. This is new, heavier industrial use that exceeds the impacts allowed in this zoning district. Please uphold the letter and the spirit of our code and deny the similar use determination. Thank you for your time and service to our city.
Thank you. The next one I have is Samantha Ringer, I think. I hope I didn't butcher it too bad. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Samantha Boringer, and I'm a Tempe resident living in the Hughes Acres neighborhood. I'm in support of the appeal being discussed, as I do not feel that the proposed autonomous vehicle charging facility is analogous to the vehicle-based service dispatch that we've been talking about. Terawatt's primary good sold is fuel for the electric vehicles. If you look on their website, their mission statement is they provide power and lots of it. They're not doing the dispatching of these vehicles. That's happening I can't remember it's a board member or the official terms. She said it's happening at the level of Waymo, and it's not managed at this proposed facility. So I think the similar use ruling is inappropriate. If anything, it's more analogous to the use definition for retail sales of gas or fuel sales, but even then it's a stretch because it's not available for public use. So with the retail sales there, I think, maybe given those kind of considerations, I'd ask you to just take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenna Lynn Gorillo? Good evening.
Good evening, Chair, board members. My name is Jana Lynn Granillo. The L's are like a Y. I am the Meyer Park Neighborhood Association Chair, and I'm here to speak in support of the appeal. And I've changed my words that I've previously prepared, and I just want to go back to the primary customer is Terawatt, not us. And the code simply does not match what we're proposing, what the proposal is here today. And so I leave that to your all's discretion for the next steps for that. I came to speak about how this build will negatively impact the Meyer Park neighborhood. For those of you who don't know where Meyer Park neighborhood is, it basically surrounds Meyer Park and is adjacent to the Hughes Acres. Specifically, the Meyer Park in the neighborhood, one of the thorough streets is Dorsey. Dorsey goes north and south through Broadway and Southern. If this gets approved, and if, which I doubt, the contractor says that they're going to stay out of our neighborhoods, they say they're going to stay out of Hughes Acres and they're not going to go on Terrace, but that leaves the rest of our neighborhood up for grabs. If you do a GPS of how to get to the 2105, without going through Terawatt, you're going to go straight up Dorsey. So putting 1,000 cars potentially onto Dorsey will be hazardous to where we live. There's a park there, there's a school there. If you go at the end of Dorsey, there's a Grace Community Church, there's Tempe Prep that's there. We have kids, we have soccer, we have pedestrians. Depending on the time of day, there is a lot of traffic. Adding the workaround traffic that's going to go to Terawatt through our neighborhood will be harmful to us who live there. Also, if they go on McClintock, you have McClintock and Alameda, also a high school traffic. I just think adding over 1,000 cars a day is a negative impact and is detrimental to our neighborhood, especially with all the humans and soccer balls and that sort of thing going across the park. I just want to echo my neighbors' concerns here in solidarity, given the nature of the business. It's not just Hughes Acres, it's all the surrounding neighborhoods around and the workarounds that will happen to try to get to 2105 South Terrace. Thank you for your time. Thank you for serving.
Thank you. Next will be Victor Arano?
Arano, close enough.
Arano? Sorry.
My students used to call me Teacher Victor because they could never get my name right. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Victor Arano, and I've been a resident on Terrace Road for 53 years in the same house. You don't want to see what condition it's in now. And I just have a couple of concerns with this question about whether or not the administrator's decision should stand. there are two separate issues here. One of them is a question of analogy. Is the proposal by Terawatt analogous to a taxi stand? There's also a question of fact. Is there a no greater detriment in that neighborhood from Terawatt as there would be from a taxi stand or a taxi business? Now, the administrator, focused his entire attention on developing the analogy. And as far as I can see from his decision and order, spent almost no time whatsoever on discussing the question of the no greater harm, so to speak, that Terawatt would bring. And I think that that's a question which is, as we say here, hear and decide. What is your job? To hear and decide appeals in which it is alleged that there is an error in an order. That, to me, is an error in an order. There was no consideration of the factual basis that the taxi stand and the Terawatt would be equally detrimental to the neighborhood. I want to mention a couple of things, and some of it's been alluded to, so I just want to take my 3 minutes and mention one little item. If I can just have the board's indulgence for a minute. I haven't used one of these machines in a while. What do? I don't know anything about computers. Never been there, don't know it. Oh, like this? Yeah. And where does it go? Up there? Come up. Okay. Whoops, sorry. Like this? Oh, look at that. How cool is that? Let me go this way. Okay. Oh, I love it. So here's the situation. The Terawatt is going to, this is Terrace Road here. You can see that. This is Terrace Road. Terawatt is proposing that, and up here is Broadway, and this is the school right here, the school parking lot. This is their proposal here. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, okay.
You're out of time, sorry.
Okay.
Next person is James Mooney.
Oh, a question. Can I enter this as part of the record of this proceeding?
No.
No?
No, you
Okay.
cannot.
But we appreciate it nonetheless.
Okay, so I just put this down.
Is there a James Mooney? Oh, there he is. Okay. I didn't see him. Okay. And Kathleen Mooney is on deck next.
Honorable members of our wonderful council here in Tempe. It's so nice to be here with you. And I live 4 houses south of Cheryl and Todd. And my wife's Kathleen. You can come up with me, honey. Come on. You can use both of our times together. We both had just a few things to say. We lived here for 45 years in the same house. And I can see common sense is starting to take over at this meeting. I really do. And the reason I say that is because we have come to, I'm understanding this as a battle between the humans and the robots. And basically, we're the humans that live in the neighborhood, that live in this area. And the robots are Terawatt. They don't have a mind or a brain. They're programmed by somebody else, so it's artificial. But this is a very valuable neighborhood to the city. And I was at Sam's Club, the new one over at Tempe Marketplace the other day. And there were 4 EMTs from our fire department there. And I told him about what's happening in our neighborhood. And he said, well, above all, let me tell you this. If there is ever a fire from one of those, get out of your house immediately. And that was enough for me to realize if I don't come up here and speak out, shame on me. That's the way I feel. And my wife will really get after me if I don't include her. She's our little gal here, and she was, okay, I won't take up any more time.
Thank you for all showing up tonight. That's what my husband always says when we go someplace, showing up for work. And this is a long day, I know. I just want to stay alive when the emergency vehicles come to my house and the ingress and regress is Terrace Road. Now, this is all clogged up with cars being recharged. I'm just kind of wondering, can you hear me? Yeah, you're Kathleen Mooney? Yes, I am. I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I'm just kind of wondering how these emergency vehicles, which I called 3 of in the past 10 months. My son had a blood count of over 600. He's diabetic. He nearly died. They got him to Tempe Hospital right here, and he made it. And I got the E. coli of the blood, and I just passed out. I haven't been in the hospital since I had my kids. But anyways, I found out when that shutdown happened in San Francisco, 3 weeks before Christmas, the power went out in the city, and all the Waymo cars stopped in the middle of the street of the intersections, and the people who were riding in the cars couldn't even get out of them. They just stopped cold because I guess the cars are recharged or catapulted ahead by the mapping of the street lights. That's how they go forward. Something to do with the connection of the street lights and how they map these Waymo cars. And I thought to myself, oh my heavens, if an emergency vehicle is coming to our house and the fire department pushes the stop sign or how they do that red sign so they can go through it, or whatever, it's going to hold things up. And both times I had the emergency, it was life or death. So how is that going to help me in my neighborhood? And there's a lot of elderly people in our neighborhood that need help. And when they need an emergency, they need it right away. And the fireman told my husband at the same time he thanked him for saving my life and coming so quickly, he said, they don't need to put that station in your neighborhood. He said, they have a facility in a building on Broadway and Price or Southern and Price that 1,000 cars go in and out every day and recharge. Waymo does. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the fire department is, and he told us that is not necessary for your neighborhood. I just wonder, maybe you can check on that. So I just want to stay alive, and I want emergency vehicles to come expediently as fast as they can get us to the hospital. All of us. We thank you very much.
Thank you for your
voting
time.
against it.
Justin Rutger, you're next. And then David Rainey, you'll be next after Justin. And please, before you start speaking, say your name.
Hi, I'm Justin Rucker. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm here in support of the appeal. My family and I live on Terrace within a few hundred feet from the proposed site. We have 4 young daughters, and one of whom is deaf. The comparison to a traditional taxi service is a gross misclassification. This is not a neighborhood service. It is an industrial scale logistics hub being shoehorned into a planned commercial center, PCC1. I am not against the technology, but I believe it belongs in an industrial area like GI GID commercial perhaps would be a good one, or create a new one for charging vehicles less than, say, 750 kilowatts or a megawatt. First, the comparison to a vehicle-based service fails on function. The facility is a private fleet depot, exists solely to refuel fleets of commercial autonomous vehicles. You cannot equate a taxi depot with a 24/7 high-capacity commercial EV charging terminal. Second, the service station comparison is flawed. While a service station is permitted under PCC 1 with a use permit, its defining characteristic is dispensing fuel at retail to the public. This facility is private, does not serve the neighborhood. Instead, it consumes the neighborhood's peace and infrastructure to serve a third party. Regarding it being less detrimental, the zoning administrator claims it's less intense than a repair shop. I ask, is a 24/7 cycle of unmanned vehicles operating right next to a school in a residential area truly less intense? A repair shop closes at 5, facility creates a conveyor belt of autonomous traffic and noise, allegedly not greater than ambient, so they say, through the night. A taxi dispatch center doesn't require large transformers, cooling systems for rapid charging, or constant vehicle movements. The technical requirements alone for this site make it more detrimental. Leveraging the unlisted use clause of the ZDC effectively bypasses the intent of the PCC1 district. This is clearly industrial use. We ask the board to overturn this ruling and to protect the integrity of our neighborhood and the safety of adjacent schools. Finally, on precedent, if you allow this industrial use in PCC1 under a similar use ruling, you set a dangerous precedent for other inappropriate industrial uses to move into the neighborhood commercial zones across the city. I'll say this is serial number 1 for this type of facility in Tempe, and I think serial number 2 for Terawatt. Do we really want to accept that level of risk in Tempe? Regarding, with my last 14 seconds, just items that make it more detrimental, the 24/7 nature, fire safety risk, which has been mentioned, and lack of human oversight.
Thank you for your comments. David, please, Rayner. And Candy Lesher, please be on deck.
Madam Chair and board members, I wanted to bring all the thoughts back again to the detriment of this, this particular project. I'm not sure why it's trying to be, pounding a round peg into a square hole. It keeps going over again. I get a pretty good sense after listening to all the presentations that you kind of get a sense that this isn't the right fit, that at a core level, it's not right. And when you look at the similar uses, we're trying to stretch it to kind of pound it into that space there. And, none of the similar uses really fit. And none of them, if you go back to the core of, it's using 5 terawatts of power. They're going to pull power lines into this. I don't know if they're coming overhead, if they're going to have to trench into that. I don't know if you've ever been next to a transformer that supplies that type of power. It's very impressive, and it's not in a good way. It's very scary. But and the other part about that is the cars. They're not ready for prime time. There's a lot of risk there. It's right up against several schools close by. The kids walk through there, and it's easy. Clearly with the parking lots with beeping cars, they do not have control of these. So it just takes a quick search on the internet to really know that they have mostly control over it. But to have those around the kids and the neighborhood and that massive amount of power, it just screams industrial area, not residential. And respectfully, I would hope you would recommend the approval of this appeal, and thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Candy, and I just want to make an announcement. When I call your name as being on deck, I'd like you to come to the front. We have 37 people that want to talk. We want to make sure that everybody gets their 3 minutes and that we have time to listen to you. We want to hear all of you. So if Candy, you're here. Rebecca Davis, if you could come up and sit in one of these chairs so we can have a quick turnaround. Thank you.
Madam
Candy, go ahead.
Chair, Board, thank you so much. I'm here not as a scientist or an engineer or knowledgeable person like some of these people here. I'm here as a resident, and I have to say I was very disconcerted by the fact that you were asked multiple times to not look at the property, just to look at the code, look over here. But what that does is it pulls the humanity out of what we're actually talking about here, the residents. The fact that this is not complementary in any way, shape, or form to this type of neighborhood, that it is not socially vitalizing to our neighborhood, that it is autonomous vehicles that add nothing, that bring nothing to us except concerns about fire, the traffic, and all the other things that go over that entire area that you've heard multiple times tonight. So I want to thank you so much for recognizing the humanity that is also involved in this decision, not just the code, because there are a lot of residents there, and the one thing that hasn't been mentioned, and that is property value. I guarantee you not a single person in that law firm or in Terawatt or in the companies that they're going to be renting to are going to want to buy a home right there next to it. In fact, really, those are the only people who are benefiting from this, not your residents. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Did we get her name?
Her name was Candy Lesher. Okay, again, I need you to come up front when you're called for on deck. We do need to get through these. We want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to be heard, and we have 37 of them. So Rebecca, please come down. Connie, if you could please be on deck, and that means come up and sit on here so when she's done and she's walking back, you can already be speaking. Thank you. Rebecca Davis?
Okay.
And please say your name.
I'm Rebecca Davis. I live in the Hughes Acres neighborhood on Terrace, and I'm just asking you to please not allow this compound to go into our neighborhood. And it is in the neighborhood. I think that's been made pretty abundantly clear today. This is not out on Broadway. You have to drive into the neighborhood, down Terrace, a residential street to get to this. You know, it's literally also abundantly clear, it's literally a few short feet from apartments and houses, and we know it will greatly diminish the neighborhood. It will not bring anything to the neighborhood, and I've heard some pretty alarming things today that I hadn't even considered. And also to address whether Waymos would be available or autonomous vehicles would be available to pick up passengers in the neighborhood. I can assure you, as a user of that occasionally, they come very quickly. They are constantly circling in the Broadway and rural McClintock area. You only have to wait a few minutes before one goes down Terrace as it stands right now. So, and I just would like to make a point that I'm sure you would not like to have this industrial compound in your neighborhood. So I thank you for listening, and we hope that you will not allow this to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Connie and Julianne Rudker, if you could please come down, you'll be on deck. Thank you. And please remember to say your name.
All right. I'm just setting my timer. My name is Connie Jo Vickery. I live in this neighborhood. I just want to really stress 24/7, 365 days a year. I'm one of those people who get anxious, nervous, and sound really impacts me. And I cannot think of living in a neighborhood where 24/7, 365 days, I will have noise that, quote, is ambient, but ambient has no real definition. It means different things to different people. And I can tell you that when I hear noise from Tempe Town Lake, like there was this weekend, I can hear that at my house. So I can't fathom that I won't hear some of this noise as well. And I know that you're looking at code, but maybe we should be looking at a code for this particular type of situation, because it is unique. And I do agree, there's a lot of value to having these vehicles. I'm not saying there isn't. But I just believe we do have to consider the human aspect when you're considering where you're going to be putting these sorts of things. I also want to point out that Terrace is a very narrow street. I ride my bike to work at ASU every day. I go through that particular light, and I can tell you that there are people who go on those scooters who go the wrong direction. They pull out, they go quickly, they pull out in front of cars, and they're not going to stop when they have these kind of cars going through. There is no left turn lane there. There is none. And if you add one, it's also going to impact all the traffic going east and west. And I think that needs to be also considered. Also, the unpredictability of these cars. I've seen them pull out in the middle of going out of one of the restaurants, and they went into the street. And all the cars had to go around them because they didn't back up. I've seen them stop where the buses are supposed to be parked, and the bus driver had to honk, honk, honk because there's not a person there to make them move. They stopped at a corner, a T intersection, and they wouldn't move, and another bus came. The bus driver got out and said to the person who was going to be using that service, "Hey, I can't get by you. Can you at least call these people to move this car?" And it took several minutes for them to move, so they are unpredictable. And I want to say thank you for your time.
Thank you, Juliana. And Catherine Menifee, you are on deck. Please come down.
Hi, good evening. My name is Juliana Rucker, and I live on Terrace with my family. My window can see into this proposed lot. We can see it all. I want to highlight the point, the detrimental point, that while autonomous vehicles are allowed on city streets, the density of unmanned vehicles concentrated at a single point next to a school or create a unique pedestrian safety hazard that traditional vehicle services do not pose. I also think about my children play in our front yard often. It's our yard, they play with balls. I think it would be detrimental to the community to have a bunch of autonomous vehicles roaming around. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine, you can come up. And Mary Morgan, come down. You're on deck.
Mary Morgan's not here. She left a couple hours ago. Hi, I'm Kat. Do you want to give the next person?
You are
Right after
Catherine?
me?
I'm gonna do that right now. Mariana Donlin.
She left also.
Okay.
We're all in the neighborhood.
Michelle Pide. All right, come on down for deck.
Hi, I'm Catherine Menifee. I wasn't expecting to speak. I live 4 doors down from where this thing is going in, and I think our property value is going to go way down, and we're redoing our backyard, and we're just very nervous about the whole thing, the sound, everything. I'm totally against having Terawatt have their charging station there. I support the appeal.
Thank you, Michelle. And Daniel Surer, I think it is, Surer, you're on deck. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Board of Adjustment. My name is Michelle Pide, and I live in Hughes Acres neighborhood. I wanted to share my support of this appeal. I wish to express my concern for a specific detriment we anticipate if this appeal is denied. As a mother of 3 young children, I am concerned for the increased traffic through the neighborhood. Terawatt has assured the neighbors that these autonomous vehicles would not travel through the neighborhood themselves, which may be true, but I can almost guarantee that no humans will continue to use the intersection in question. This would absolutely result in increased traffic through the neighborhood. This is a major concern for many of us in the neighborhood, and I greatly appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Daniel, you're up. Janelle Van Brunt, you are on deck. Please come down.
Hi, my name is Daniel Suber. I live on Concordia between Terrace and Rural. I support the appeal. I think that this is dangerous. It's a high traffic area. Terrace and Broadway is a very dangerous intersection already. I've been almost hit by a car. I've seen people be hit by cars. And I think adding more traffic will not benefit anybody. And I think this might benefit Waymo, but it doesn't benefit the community or the neighborhood specifically. And I have interacted with the Waymos personally. And while I understand that they're useful as rideshare service, they're not the same as a manned vehicle. And I think that just adding dozens of unmanned vehicles on the street doesn't really do anything to benefit the community. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Janelle and Mark Van Brunt, you are on deck. Please come down.
My name is Janelle Van Brunt. I've lived at the same house on Terrace for 45 years. I want to draw your attention here again to this map. This is the proposed site. Right here, this little white line, are apartments, mostly rentals. And actually, they're condominiums, but they're mostly rented out, which means that none of the people that live there received any notification of this event because they are not property owners, they're renters. 22 of those units have bedrooms that are 10 feet from the wall, which is not as, it is a little bit less than what it is from me to you, 10 feet. These are 22 families that have their bedrooms less than 10 feet from this wall. It's unconscionable that such a project could be put that close to that many human beings who are living there, with all the noise, with the lights. I can't even imagine it. If I were a mother of children, they have to look out, they see that, it's right there. It's not even as far as from me to you. We were told by the attorney for Terawatt, don't look at the specific site. That is exactly our point. This is our specific site that we're looking at. Not just those apartments, but us. This is a neighborhood of people. This kind of project belongs in an industrial park. It does not belong in a neighborhood where bedrooms are 10 feet from this site. I ask you to really look into your hearts. Would you want your family 10 feet from this? And these were renters. They received no notification. My husband and I went over and talked with them. They didn't get any notification. They're not property owners. Thank you for considering this very human realm.
Thank you. Mark, Denise Robinson, you are on deck. Please come down.
So I'm Mark Van Brunt. I've lived in the same house with the same wife for 45 years with 6 children. So I'm not going to, I have a lot of other things that I'm glad that were brought up. The one thing that might be unique is that after the Development Commission, we've had some relationships with these businesses across the street. And so I began to talk to them about what they thought about this. And they, I would tell you that this whole similar use idea didn't go over very well. They said, we run a business, we rely on Terrace, at Terrace Connection for all of our business across from rural and go into our property, be it we have well at this point QT and Midas and there's another one down. And here was their concern, is that they figured it out, that 1,200 sorties out of there that can only go one direction, and it's in the direction of the up Terrace, that's going to tie up
that intersection, the very intersection where most of their business comes from. And it has been for them something that they're just dreading in terms of just the tie-up and the slowdowns and the waits. And so they're very interested in how this hearing comes out. Let's just put it that way. So I just would hope that consideration would be given to that as well. And we appreciate your time and interest in our neighborhood. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm assuming Denise Robinson isn't here. Donna Aguilar, and Randy Spirl, I think. I can't read the handwriting. Is there a Randy here? He left. Eileen Spinla. Daniel Jacobs. All right, just come down, be on deck. Thank you very much. And don't forget to say your name.
Hi, I'm Donna Aguilar. I live on Concordia, just a few blocks from this site. And I think the unknown is the question here. Why that lot is the target? Why is our neighborhood the target for this? Isn't there another place this could go that wouldn't have any of these issues? That's my first question. Second question, I mean, did they consider other properties? Did they consider other lots, other places that they could have done it, you know? We wouldn't all have to be here. This just doesn't belong in a neighborhood. And I hope you see that. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel, you're next. And Vincent Martinez. Vincent Martinez? All right. Go ahead, Daniel.
Hi, my name is Danny Jacobs. I live just down the street from where the charging station would go in. I use Waymos fairly often. I think the industrial nature of the use is probably in the best scenario, if the AI drivers are working as intended, will be maximized. The efficiency in and out of the site will be a lot more than a typical dispatch station where human drivers stop for a cup of coffee. This is one car every minute, and that is more akin to something like a factory than it is an occasional drive up and change cars like at a taxi. So I would suggest and encourage you guys to look for the best possible alternative in the next most upgraded zoning value PCC2. There are lots of those areas around. There's a few on the map, I think. So it may well be that the thing you have to pick isn't ideal. But that's why we redo these things every few years. We got to go in and clean up all that mess. So please do the best you can to make it so that we don't have to come back and do this again for another neighborhood and another neighborhood. These neighborhood zones are really meant to be something that is small and fairly infrequent. And I would also just add that the energy in the city is picking up quite a bit. There have been a lot of other things added in the neighborhood where old uses were changed and buildings were torn down and more busy restaurants and things with drive-throughs and all that sort of thing have been picking up. There are a lot more people on scooters than there were 5 years ago. I ride my bike into ASU every day and have done for the past 10 years. And I'd say that I've seen a lot more crazy stuff in the last 5 years and even more in the last 2. So things are just going to get crazier, and the way to bring the temperature down is to not really push the zoning classification that is sort of the most neighborhood kind. That's my message to you. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Vincent, you're up. Andrea Martinez, you are on deck. Please come down.
Madam Chair, board members, I wanted to just address this PC1 zoning district. I don't think would be the responsibility of your board to have to come up with a similar. We need professionals, Tempe members The code, the people that write the codes, we need engineers, that kind of stuff. That's the people that need to address this, because it's new. It hasn't been out there. We don't have this type of thing when these zoning codes were created for one of these recharge stations. And I think that, there needs to be more time on that, to where the code is then written in regards to charging stations.
Thank you. Andrea and Chris Muse, you are on deck. Please come down. Is Chris here?
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members.
Andrea, hold on for a minute. Elizabeth Baker? All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. My name is Andrea Martinez, and unlike a lot of people, I do not work inside the home. I don't get to telecommute. I commute to downtown Phoenix every day, and I've been doing that for about 25 years. That is my exit and my return every day to and from my job back to my home. I have also seen the scooters they just come across. They're not pedestrians, they are crossing without really making eye contact with the driver, and I can imagine it would add to the traffic danger there with these autonomous vehicles. But more than anything, I will probably have to find a different way to leave my neighborhood and to come home, which in turn will increase internal neighborhood traffic. And for that reason, I don't believe this is zoned properly as a PCC1. I believe it is not a benefit to the neighborhood. And I especially think that if it were a retail location, you would have, like many people have mentioned, kind of business hours, 8 to 5. You would have not 1,000 vehicles. I'd be very surprised that for a retail operation that it would draw that much business into an interior family neighborhood. Those are businesses that are typically on the main street, such as Broadway. So this is not something that is serving the public. Public has no access to it, and the public does not benefit from it. So I also agree it is not equivalent to a taxi service as the argument has been presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth, you're up. David, I cannot pronounce, H, are you here? Yep. All right, you're next.
Elizabeth Baker. I live in Hughes Acres. I think that we've discussed that this is not a very good use of a very small parcel of land. There was a tremendously large, what do you call the PCC1 or whatever the zoning code was, just on the other side of the immediate apartments that had a True West Credit Union. It sat vacant for a very long time, and they went in and they put in housing because no businesses, a dentist may have moved in on one end of the property. We have seen the industrial neighbors along Rio Salado as it was gentrified, kicked out and bought out, whatever you want to call them, and new housing built. None of us who live in this neighborhood moved to a nuisance. The nuisance is coming to us. And to think that somehow it's a legitimate use of an extremely small parcel of dirt and that is the highest and best use of that property, I can only assume that Terawatt got a great deal on buying the property because they're not running the business. They're going to rent it out. So I'd start singing to that, but I don't know the words.
Thank you. David, you are up. Bill Makata, are you here? Bill? I have nothing. You have nothing? Okay. Beth Mercada, are you here? All right, you're on deck. You're up next. David, go ahead.
So I had a lengthy list, nearly every point of which has been addressed by someone else, and I agree with all the points that were made previously, so I won't repeat any of them. So I only had a couple things to add or mention that I thought might be relevant. The idea of the parcel based on the zoning being intended to be developed for the benefit of the neighborhood
seems to me clearly to be contradicted by the way the dispatching of the vehicles would work, to my understanding, which is without taking any consideration of responding to local calls as priority calls for the service of those vehicles from that location. If that were the case, it might be a reason to consider that it was more of a direct benefit to the neighborhood. But as one of the other speakers mentioned, the Waymo vehicles are so responsive and quick to come anyway that it wouldn't be much benefit. As for dispatch, it's central dispatching between IT centers and cars directly with no function locally in that parcel, to my understanding. I just want to bring up something that I've been trying to track down data on but haven't found yet. I've been in Hughes Acres since our house was built in '77. And at one point, there was a proposal for a Pet Boys store to be going in on the southwest corner of Dorsey and Broadway. And that got the neighbors in a bit of an uproar, and it was never followed through on. I'd contacted the city to see if they could provide me some documentation on that, but so far no luck from them, from the History Museum, or from Tempe Tribune, but it definitely happened. It was probably between '77 and '99, but in terms of the kind of use you're talking about for a PCC1, that would have been justified technically, but it didn't happen because the neighbors had such strong objections to it, and I think there's even more reason to object to this thing. Aside from that, the point brought up about being downwind of a smoke from the fire, yeah, we'd be right in that path, so that's one more reason I'd object to it. And also I'm wondering whether Terawatt has the potential to provide service to companies other than Waymo, and under what circumstances that would be approved, or would it just automatically happen? For instance, if Tesla started running robo-taxis in our area, or one of the other potential vendors of that service, would, if they contracted with Terawatt and their vehicles are arguably less safe, would we have any visibility on or control over what other services use that facility and were running through our neighborhood? And would the constraints on the operation of those vehicles be the same as Waymo has agreed to in their commitments to use that facility? Because that brings up a whole other can of worms about future prospects that, I don't know, makes me very uncomfortable. Thank you.
Thank you. Beth, you're up. Bridget Humphrey, you're on deck. Bridget, are you here? I am. Thank you. Go ahead,
Good
Beth.
evening. My name is Beth Marcotte. My husband, Bill, and I live directly across the street from the proposed site. We are on the corner of Terrace and Palmcroft. My kitchen window looks out onto Terrace. I can see everything going on. I can see that parcel of land right across the street. Our driveway, we back out onto Terrace, and it's right where all of that traffic is going to nosedive right into and out of the proposed facility. So we also have a bigger stake in the game, if you will. I really appreciate the points that, especially you, Ms. Cross, that came up with, that really put in the forefront that Terawatt is actually the owner of this whole process, and that Waymo is merely a customer to whom it is being rented out to. It does not provide a service to our neighborhood. I'm very nervous about the noise level, the constant hum, the idea of a transformer right across the street. That you guys have heard transformers, they buzz constantly, and then to have 1,000 vehicles in and out of that facility 24/7 is mind-boggling. The lights, the noise, the traffic. I'm a nurse at a local high school here, and I know how teenagers drive. This is another point, and it's right next to a high school. Teenagers do not drive with common sense. Their brains are not fully developed. Y'all know that, and the idea that that they are going to be battling with all of these autonomous vehicles coming in and out of that parcel of land that is actually right next to it. Sometimes they do overflow parking into that parcel. That's how close it is. So I really would ask that you continue to consider, as you've already begun, that this property really is geared for a more neighborhood-friendly business rather than a charging station. I appreciate your time, and thank you for being with us tonight and to listening to us.
Thank you. Bridget, you're up. Stanley Odell, are you here? You're up next. Please come down.
We'll see if I can make this thing work. Probably not.
Don't forget to state your name.
Yes, I'll start. Good evening. My name is Bridget Humphrey. Thank you, Madam Chair and board members, for putting up with us all here tonight. I live on Terrace Road. I've lived on Terrace Road since 1985. In my beloved home, in which I had also hoped to spend my retirement years. I can see from looking at some of the charts that have appeared that from first glance or a 50,000-foot view, this doesn't look like a high-impact project. Cars drive in, fill up or recharge, and cars drive out and go home. But that's not what we have here. One, these cars don't have a home. I've spoken to several people who live in Chandler. Chandler had some programs for these type of vehicle charging stations in recent years. The vehicles do not go home. I've been told repeatedly that they create a terrible nuisance. They will, sorry, lost my train of thought for a minute. They will drive through the neighborhoods. They cruise the neighborhoods all day long, all night long. They park in front of people's houses. When they park, they don't turn off the vehicles. They're running the entire time. If they're making noise, you can't go out and say, hey, would you move your car, because there's nobody in there to move the car. And it becomes a real nuisance for the people in the neighborhood. I know that there's a report that TerraWatt has said that they are not going to be driving south of this facility. I'm also a lawyer, and a promise like that is completely non-binding. And even if it were binding, it's not enforceable. How do you stop a driverless vehicle? I mean, do they stop when the little red lights come on and the cop behind them? I don't know. But I don't think that's a credible promise that they've made, is to stay out of the neighborhood. The other thing that we haven't really talked about, there's one aspect of I don't know how this is working, so I'm going to hold this up. I borrowed Mr. Aronow's chart because this shows the ingress and egress off of Terrace Road. When you've got cars coming off of Broadway, they're heading south onto Terrace, they're going to have to make immediate left into this charging station. That's a very busy intersection. I drive that intersection every weekday for 25 years. I sit at that long light, which is a trigger light, not a routinely changing light. So it can be a very long light. You've got cars coming in that are going to have to make an immediate left against traffic that's backed up at that light. And you're going to have a huge log jam that extends out into Broadway Road in both directions possibly, blocking this intersection. As people have talked about tonight, in recent years, the foot traffic has
Thank you.
gone
Unfortunately,
crazy.
your time is done.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Stanley, you are up. Is there a Colin Reynolds? Is there a Colin Reynolds here? Lauren Owens? Thomas King, I think. Is there a Thomas King? Anna, I can't read your last name, but it starts with a B. Anna B? All right, come on down. You're up next. Stanley, go ahead.
Stanley Odell, and I'm on Terrace Road, resident of Terrace Road in the Hughes Acres area. I have 30 years of experience as an attorney for state government, and I have a little bit of experience with ordinances and statutory language. I was interested in the discussion that was being had by members Miller and Morrow regarding what you referred to as the first prong. Let me try to give you a nail to hang your hat on here. Staff has found that this is a similar use, and they chose to use the term vehicle-based service, parentheses, dispatch, parentheses closed. But there's no evidence before you that any dispatching is cited at this facility. They're not putting a server farm there to do it, and no one would, considering the high voltage that's coming into this facility. The cars either are dispatched from a Waymo facility somewhere else where the server farm is located, or the vehicles have enough onboard software to dispatch themselves. But that's merely coincidental to their being at this charging facility. This is not a vehicle-based delivery, it's an installation-based service. What is the service? Charging. That's the only function here, other than if a couple of people may be doing some cleaning. They're there to charge, then they leave. But for them being at that location, is anyone saying that they couldn't be dispatched or dispatch would happen less? Of course not. Is anyone saying that any passengers will embark or disembark? No, there's no passenger embarkation or disembarkation facilities planned. So to argue that this is a vehicle-based service, what it really is an installation-based charging service. That is not similar. Your staff also said, well, if you find it's not similar, then you have to say what it's similar to. I mean, it's fueling. You could say the gigantic tank farm we have out at 59th Avenue, except those are human-driven trucks for the petroleum. I wouldn't even analogize it to an electrical substation, because that's generally a passive. You don't have all the vehicles coming in and out. Many of the people who've spoken before have talked about the problem with the log jam this is going to actually make worse on Terrace Road, which is already a bottleneck. I think if this ever were to make it to the Superior Court, the judge would look at the record, which you're helping to build, and ask, did anyone bother to request a report from the city traffic engineer on what this would do to Terrace Road, which is one of those quarter-mile streets, in this case between Rural and McClintock, that is designed to serve the neighborhood? Did anyone assess that? Is the report in the file? I've heard nothing tonight indicating that that has been done. So to me, that's kind of a glaring omission in the record that you're building. So I think you've got plenty to hang this on if you want to deny the position that the
Thank you.
city took. Thank you.
And Anna, you're up. Anna, you're up.
Good evening. Unlike many of my neighbors, I've only lived in the neighborhood for about 4 years. My background, however, is in entrepreneurship and business, and also driving economic development, specifically in pedestrian-friendly and pedestrian-scale neighborhoods. And this is something I've done out of state. When we moved into the neighborhood, and I do have 4 children who ride their bikes to school along the routes that have been pointed out by every person in the room, I realized very quickly that the Hughes Acres neighborhood is one of the few neighborhoods I've seen in the entire metro where you can actually get everywhere you need to go without crossing a major intersection if you wanted to. Through the Hughes Acres neighborhood, you can get to Meyer Park, you can get to several elementary schools, several churches, and several grocery stores. And now that I've been sitting in these meetings, I actually see that the zoning and all of the ordinances that are in place were designed to create that exact quality of life and that experience. I think it's very obvious that this venture will disrupt that, and I believe will ruin it. Now, in your position, you are looking at a venture that's unique and that's new. And that doesn't often happen. Most of the decisions you've had to make up to this point in the position that you're in have been based on precedents. And you're able to lean on a specific ordinance to guide you on that. It seems to me that this particular venture, because it is so new, specifically in the nature of the battery that's in the car, which is not like a typical taxi. Because this venture is so new, this is something that probably exceeds what you've ever had to deal with before. So what I would like you to do in considering whether or not this should be upheld is to think to yourselves that by not questioning deeper into this specific venture, the nature of the newness in this thing could disrupt the purpose of the entire neighborhood in being one that is a quality of life factor and not so much a convenience of getting a ride. Thanks.
Thank you. And that is all the cards I have. Diane, do we have any more?
Could we get her last name?
Anna, what is your last name? Biava. B-I-A-V-A? That is all the comment cards I have. Do we have any more? At this time, we are going to ask for rebuttals from Heather and Todd and Heather and Todd.
Good evening, Board. I'll make this brief. I know we all want to go home. Heather Dukes. I am in agreement that we need to look at the zoning ordinance. We need to look at the similar uses and then figure out if this could be more detrimental rather than focusing on the particular use. I will note that PCC1 zoning district is a neighborhood type commercial use, and we talked about that on the record here today. It's commonly next to neighborhoods. That's the purpose of that zoning district, is to provide a transition from neighborhoods to more intensive commercial districts. So it's often close to neighborhoods. So if we open up this box, this Pandora's box of allowing it at this one location in this one PCC1 zoning district, you're now allowing it in all PCC1 zoning districts throughout the city. You're also allowing it in all PCC2 zoning districts, most likely, because as the zoning administrator pointed out, there's not much difference in the permitted uses in those two zoning districts. So I would ask you to consider this not a similar use to the vehicle-based services, and it comes down to what the primary use is. And Terawatt's legal counsel used repeatedly the term vehicle fleet charging. That's what this is. This is vehicle fleet charging. And when you look at the table that she put in her slides of comparing the taxi-based service with this type of use, the energy source and the charging was nowhere in there in terms of what's similar between those uses. And that's the primary use of what Terawatt's trying to do. So please consider that. Another difference in the use is that, again, there's no humans and the service is not directly to the public. It's to a private party. And when we talk about these large shopping centers that have charging stations at them, like let's say the Target near my house has 20. Those are not generating new traffic in the area. Those are Target people are going to, the Denny's next door, and they're saying, oh, we're here for our groceries or our restaurant for the next hour, and we're going to let our vehicle charge. It's not generating new traffic to the area the way this is. So that is one key difference that's more detrimental than those types of large shopping centers on large parcels that can accommodate that type of traffic on a large arterial street. This is a residential street. And if we were to look at maybe a traffic study, like someone suggested that perhaps staff look at the traffic implications to this, the traffic study in this matter incorrectly identifies Terrace as a collector street. It's not a collector street. If you look at the general plan, it is a residential street. And so it is not appropriate for this type of commercial traffic that's generated by that use. The solution is here, and this is what I would propose, that the appeal be granted, that the use be found to be similar to fuel distribution station, which is a use allowed in the HID zoning district, which is an industrial district, and is more similar to that type of use because it's energy being sold to a private party in bulk. It's not being sold directly to the public. And then because this use is so new, if we truly want to adjust the zoning ordinance to accommodate this use in the commercial zoning districts, that's a job for the city council. After a staff study and a staff report and a public hearing. So I think in the interim, instead of opening this up widely to all these zoning districts, not knowing exactly what this is going to look like, we restrict it to the most compatible use, which is fuel distribution station, and then go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. And Todd, do you have any rebuttal?
The only thing I could add to that would be that there is no similar use to. This is such a new technology. It's kind of like what you run up against with data centers. They have very unique problems and concerns associated with them. It would be like saying, comparing a data center to, let's say, a year 2000 cyber cafe, right? I mean, you can't say that a cyber cafe is okay, so now a data center is okay. And you can't say that a taxi charging station is okay, so now this fleet charging station that draws 5 megawatts of power is okay. There is no use currently in the Tempe arena for this. And I think somebody needs to define that. And it certainly doesn't belong in this area. It belongs in an industrial area.
Thank you. Any questions for Wendy or Todd from the board?
I'm Wendy, he's Todd.
I'm not Todd. I mean, Heather or Todd. Sorry, I'm asleep.
Of course.
All right. Wendy, rebuttal?
Yes, thank you. And I'm going to endeavor to do this old school if I can with a couple of quick comments. Is that coming up? Yeah, the irony of us talking about technology and I'm doing this on an Elmo. I hope everybody at this hour appreciates this. So a couple things. I want to refocus the discussion on the fact the standard here that you have is the board should review to determine if the zoning administrator's interpretation is either not supported by credible evidence or incorrectly applies the law. That's the standard that we have in front of us here today. I also, and I'm going to jump around a bit because there's been a lot of discussion. There was a lot of discussion about what has been a very robust dialogue on the use permit. And we have made significant commitments in front of the DRC that include things like not exceeding the ambient condition, the noise condition on site, not using backup beepers on site, how the traffic circulation is going to flow. A lot of discussions we've had with fire, particular fire mitigations that we're putting in. All of those discussions and all of this discussion, which has been very robust, properly belongs in front of the City Council on whether or not that use permit here would be appropriate. I also want to talk about it. There was discussion about it doesn't serve the neighborhood, and I believe Board Member Dalton, you mentioned that you were troubled by that language in the overarching language. So I want to break that out for you here. So if you can see this, what you have up top here, this 3201, the purpose, and I think that's the language that you read to us. Yeah, so that language, I want to be clear, modifies all the zoning districts. That is not PCC 1. That is talking about residential, commercial shopping, city center, PCC, regional, mixed-use commercial. It modifies all of them. But then when you get down here a little bit further, and you focus just on what it says for PCC 1, our district, it does talk about services and entertainment uses oriented to serve the needs of the neighborhood, community, or the metropolitan region. So again, I would respectfully suggest to you that that is indeed what is occurring here. So we talk about the two-prong test, and we talked about the city's interpretation. And we suggested to you that it's very similar to a taxi dispatch service, ride-hailing service. We heard a lot of dialogue about that. Other folks suggested it is more akin to a service station, vehicle service station, distributing gas to a car. That ultimately gets us to the same result. I guess we would suggest to you that in many circumstances, that's actually more onerous on a neighborhood. I would tell you, it is not an industrial use. It is not a giant tank farm. But I do think that this discussion of having to pick a category of where we fit, we would be willing to take a continuance here and come back and talk about detrimental use and talk about what category and provide additional evidence as to why this is not a detrimental use here, if that would be helpful to this board. That is something that we are willing to entertain or have occur here to have additional information on that particular prong of the test. So I would also suggest to you, ultimately, we do comply with the test, that staff's interpretation that it is akin to a ride-hailing service, a taxi dispatch service was the correct one, and that overall, when you look at this, we are not more detrimental to so many of the other uses, your gun shop, your liquor license, a Filiberto's that could be there 24/7 and would be allowed today by right. We are not more detrimental, and as a result, the city's interpretation should stand. And again, we're willing to continue to provide additional evidence on what would be detrimental.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah.
Mara?
Counselor, in a couple sentences, give me your best argument why this is not like a fuel distribution center or station.
Chairman Foy, Board Member Morrow, fuel distribution is a large tank distributing mass liquids in large quantities. I mean, it is a significantly more industrial use. You know, here what we're talking about when you're dealing with charging stations and charging cars, again, you charge cars in homes. We put these battery packs in homes to charge cars. We could do a charging center here that was not fleet vehicle, just a charging center by right. So that is allowed by right. It's very different than a large bulk fuel distribution, which also is, you know, significantly more detrimental to a community.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and now staff, you get to read that.
All right, good evening, members of the board. So to sum up, the board's role tonight is solely to determine whether this use is similar to and not more detrimental than, and that's a phrase I'm sure we've all heard quite a bit and are probably done hearing for a while. So not similar to and not more detrimental than a vehicle-based service, parentheses, taxi dispatch, or comparable vehicle-related uses found in the PCC1 zoning district, which requires the use of the processing, which require the processing of a use permit. That's verbatim from the zoning administrator's opinion. So we've heard a lot about the numerous operational characteristics of this specific site. Traffic, fire safety, crime prevention, noise, headways, energy, etc. Those are matters that are certainly relevant in consideration in the context of evaluating a use permit. And I would note that the zoning administrator's opinion does opine that a use permit is an appropriate avenue through which to evaluate this particular use type. And through that use permit, nuisances related to any of those aforementioned impacts can be mitigated or ameliorated, and that is what we have endeavored to do. I would note that the appellant did say that this sets a precedent that this will be allowed in all PCC1 zoning districts, but again, it is with the caveat that it is subject to that use permit. So the scale, the impact are all evaluated through that use permit process, and that is contained and consistent with what is in the zoning administrator's opinion. So the appeal is a relatively simple matter for this opinion. What is this use most similar to? What do we classify a vehicle hub that is primarily intended to facilitate ride-hailing activities? And so that's the question that, you know, we're hoping to answer this evening. But you know, at the end of the day, it's you know, is there an error of fact in the administrator's opinion? And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions? I do. So there has been discussion, and it's been brought up by board members, that because Taro owns it and they're kind of leasing this out or renting it out to Waymo to use, that it's the primary business isn't a service to the community, it's a service to a private company. And that sounds that way to me. What's your response to that?
So I think the distinction is, well, I'll bring up Brian to maybe you know, get into some of the details. But you know, what we're looking at is, this isn't a one-to-one matter, right? There doesn't have to be an exact apple-to-apple comparison. It is, what is it most analogous to? Is it similar to that vehicle-based service? Is it similar to comparable uses that are located and allowed within the zoning district subject to a use permit? I mean, that's the primary question. So what is the service? I would say the service is the ride-hailing aspect, right? Somebody put something into their phone to request a vehicle, and it arrives. You know, in terms of how that vehicle, how this site functions within the context of the community, that is the impact. That is what is occurring.
Okay. My other question is, so if I bought that land and I decided I wanted to put a parking lot there, parking surface, but I'm going to use it for my company, like I have a business there that I'm going to put there that's allowed, but only my employees can use the charging stations, would that be allowed?
So you're referring to, say you open up an office retail facility, but you limit use of the parking lot to just customers. I would say, yeah.
No, the charging stations, not for customers. I open a retail store, right?
Yeah.
And there's a parking lot that can be used. But I have charging stations. Let's say I have 10 charging stations.
Yeah.
But they're only for employees. Would that fit?
Yeah, so, when we evaluate projects, when a project comes through site plan review and they identify their parking configuration, what we're primarily concerned with is, does it meet its minimum parking obligations? And if the answer is yes, then the sort of restrictions placed upon that parking regime is up to the private property owner. So if it is a retail, service with, dedicated employee parking spaces that are charging stations, that's allowed.
And
another point to bring up is similar, like if you had a parking structure for an office service, if they had a dedicated amount of charging stations for their employees of that, there would be no use permit process. They'd be allowed to install the charging stations within either the parking lot or the structure to provide that service for their employees.
So right now,
But as an ancillary use,
that property there's no restrictions as far as use
because there's no land use on the property today.
for charging stations. I guess that's like the charging stations could go in there even if it's not Terra that does it. It's anybody could put. I could put a parking lot, a commercial parking lot that I sell spaces to the public, and have 40 spaces, and every single one of the spaces has a charger on it. That would be allowed.
Chair Foy, that is correct. Commercial parking is allowed by right.
All right.
To follow up on that, because I had the same, I'm following your line of thinking.
Yeah.
And really the zoning code decision we're looking at today is detached from the customer that the land developer is going to provide. Really is irrelevant that it's going to be Waymo or that they could offer those charging stations to members of the public or to specific people, but it's can they put the charging station in the parking lot there? That's, it's not customer dependent.
Madam Chair, Board Member Morrow, the other factor in the question you had asked about in the applicant of terawatt. So this is similar to when we get requests for cell tower use permits. Typically, it's the cell tower providers that actually build the infrastructure for the tower. They own the tower elements, but they don't own the antennas and service that's provided by that tower. So those companies are coming in, applying for the use permit. They own the 50 or 60-foot tower element, and then they sublease to the phone providers, T-Mobile, Sprint, and providing that service on their site. So they're the applicants, the primary applicants, but it takes both the two businesses to create that service that is being presented for you today, which as a result requires that use permit process.
Are those cell towers allowed in TPC1?
Yes, with a use permit.
Even simpler, if I put a gas station there and said, I'm only going to sell gas to taxi companies, I can do that.
If you present your proposal that way, yes.
And got a use permit for it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like we've had requests to come in that said, I'm planning to build a coffee shop building with a drive-through. We're required a use permit because it's a drive-through. But they don't know yet what coffee shop is planning to operate that facility. Sometimes that agreement comes later on in the process.
And the infrastructure being built could be, I mean, in theory, the city could buy the infrastructure 10 years from now and say, okay, this is a publicly available car charging station for humans, robots, or otherwise.
If we get in the business with that.
I'm not saying that's a good idea.
Any
Okay,
oth-
well,
Go ahead.
Okay. Some interesting hypotheticals. Possibly, I'm thinking we should come back to the issue before us, which is the decision of the zoning administrator and what the zoning administrator hung his hat on when he made the determination as he did. The use, and I'll quote, "The use is more similar to a vehicle-based service under the service category. Specific examples under this category include courier, delivery services, taxi, and ambulance as similar uses." We have had a lot of information, a lot of suggestion before us, and I think I tend to agree that it's none of those, that it is an industrial use similar to a fueling depot because it's provided in bulk. You've got a 24-hour, 40-bay or more charging station, which is constantly providing electricity. Just if it was gas and you came in and put your gas nozzle in and said, okay, fine, I'm going to pump out as much gas as I could, and somebody else comes in after that, and after that, and after that, that'd be a fueling station too. The hypotheticals aside, we have to decide whether or not the zoning administrator made the correct interpretation and found the correct level, correct rationale upon which to render his decision. And I think that's really where we have to come back to. Thank you.
A quick question is, Ms. Riddle, they brought up that TerraCycle would make commitments to address noise abatement, to address lighting, to address public concerns, and and I've been in multiple situations in my past life where corporate entities, industrial entities, they would make all these commitments and then not do it. So what would the recourse be if they made these commitments and then that's not how it played out? Like, would they be prepared to pack up and go? Would they be prepared to address the community, address the concerns? What would the implications be if they made these commitments where the appeal was denied, they were granted to do it, and then it's not how it worked out? What's the recourse to the community?
Yes, Chair, Board Member Dalton. So we are processing, there is a use permit in process, which does contain specific stipulations of approval that if the property owner is found to be in violation of, and those are related to noise, traffic, specifically sort of the circulation patterns associated with the facility. If they are found to be in violation, that use permit could be revoked or brought back to a hearing before the Development Review Commission and/or City Council. So those are the measure, or the sort of enforcement mechanisms that the city has at its disposal to evaluate and make sure that it's following through on its promises. So that that has been identified and processed and included in the analysis by staff and presented to the DRC.
Thank you.
Andrea?
And to go to what Terawatt would be willing to do, I would defer to Ms. Rydell and their team about that component.
And I guess I want to because there's, again, two prongs. The detrimental impact on the neighborhood, it's a similar use, okay, even if we buy that it's a similar use as taxi, right? Its impact on the neighborhood is significantly different than a taxi place. And I guess my issue would be the traffic and the autonomous driving. It is allowed, but it's still more detrimental than maybe a taxi service, dispatch service, wouldn't it?
Chair Foy, I think the best way that I kind of envision all of this is the similar use ruling is kind of a high-level definitional. What is this most similar to? And then the actual scale and impact and the specific nuisances can be addressed through that use permit process. There's a distinction between all uses when they're scaled up to a certain point, right? And that is kind of what the city's use permit process is intended to address. And so the similar use ruling is more or less just a comparison of all the uses that we have in our zoning code. And it says, it's most like this. This needs a use permit. We are going to evaluate all of those considerations: traffic, energy, crime prevention, noise, safety, everything through the use permit process.
That's going to be addressed more and was addressed more with the approval of the use permit and then the appeal of the use permit.
Chair
And it
Floyd.
wasn't really, I'm sorry, and it wasn't really something that was specifically addressed when making the decision on the similar use here.
Chair Foy, I'll defer to Ryan about sort of the very specifics, but in terms of, just the crafting of the opinion, it is looking just purely at what is this generally, what is it most like, and then we apply those specific criteria for a use permit, which include nuisances, which includes traffic issues, which includes SEPTED considerations, and all of those, we evaluate with our professional staffs. We've had our transportation staff look at this site. We've had our SEPTED staff look at this site. We've had fire look at this site. So, and all of those concerns have been addressed with those professional staff.
So the fact that these are autonomous vehicles, which is mentioned in Mr. Levesque's decision, is not the basis for granting the decision, because that is part of the use as opposed to the development of the land.
I'm going to defer to Mr. Levesque on that, because that's kind of his specific wording.
I'm getting a nod from
Okay,
him, so I'll
I don't want to speak for him.
the record will reflect that he nodded in agreement. All right, I think I know where I stand now.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to open the floor to discussion with the board. Any comments? Thoughts? I can tell you I'm on the fence. So many of the things that were brought up today obviously are huge and mean a lot to the neighborhood. And I'm going to, I live in Meyer Park. I never even heard of this until this was put on our thing. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm listening to you, but I don't think it's appropriate for what we're doing here, which is so narrow. And a lot of your concerns should be addressed in use. That's the way I'm seeing it. My biggest issue, though, is the detrimental analysis. Like, that is part of making this decision. It's in the code. If you find you're looking at the two-pronged test, there's, analogous. Okay, if we say it is like a taxi service, which pretty much I'm okay with. It is similar to a taxi service in mind. But the detrimental part, I just don't know if the analysis was ever done, and it doesn't seem reasonable to me that it would be the same or similar or not worse than a taxi service or than a delivery service. That's, I guess, where I'm at. And I just want to know if anybody else has any thoughts on that.
Well, I have a comment on what you said first about the narrow focus. I would disagree a little bit in that sense, is that there's a lot of disagreement here in the interpretation. You have one camp that says why this is the greatest thing in the world, and others that say this is absolutely terrible and will decimate their property. So isn't that kind of what the essence of a public board is for, to hear those arguments and make an interpretation where the disagreement exists? Because really, none of this stuff there's not a lot of precedence for this. And when any of these purposes, these scopes, these codes were brought into play, nobody thought of like lithium batteries. Nobody thought of high charging 24-hour driverless cars. I mean, it's like the Jetsons. And and I don't even think their cars were driverless. But so what I'm saying here is that I think as a public board, our focus isn't so narrow, and there is a little bit of autonomy in essence to kind of label that and make that interpretation and clear the path for what could be established in the future.
Well, I think, I understand what you're saying, and I don't totally disagree, and it's hard, but we really do have a narrow purpose. We're the Board of Adjustment. We are not hearing the use permit appeal. We are hearing an appeal specifically on, is it similar and is it more detrimental? That's it. Those are the two issues, right? And so within what you're saying, that is part of the detrimental analysis, in my opinion. So that's where my concern is, like, I just don't see it not being the same as a taxi dispatch or being the same as a delivery service or an ambulance service. That's where I'm having the issue.
Right, and there's disagreement in that narrow focus. There's disagreement where some say it's similar to a taxi service, others are saying it's not. It's, what did the one gentleman that was an attorney said, that it was, I can't remember the exact terminology he used, but it was like industrial, I can't remember exactly the phrase he used. But the whole point is there's some disagreement, and that's kind of why we're here, to flush
Right,
that
and no,
out.
and that's fine. That's disagreement on the first prong. I totally respect that you don't agree with me, that I think
Well,
it's good.
something I'm
That's-
just saying, I'm not taking a position on that, I'm just saying there's differences. I'm not taking a position necessarily on record, there's just some differences of opinion, and I think that is part of what we're here for.
Chair Foy, I just wanted to say that it's interesting that you're having a difficulty with the detriment part, because I feel the opposite. I do, I feel the opposite. Frankly, just as we're discussing, I just want to say that I think that the city of Tempe and others in the metro area are approaching things like e-bikes, autonomous vehicles, things that are frankly changing quite rapidly in our transportation systems. They're doing their best to figure out how does it fit in our city, what kind of infrastructure do we have that can accommodate it, what kind do we need to build. So I think that's all great, and these discussions are important to be having. But as far as autonomous vehicles go, the safety piece, I mean, like, I work in a field where I know a little bit about it. It's still a growing field, there's still a lot of research happening, but the general consensus is that they are quite safe. And I think in the infrastructure, if they've been in talks with SRP, as they said, when they do reviews, they have to, they have transportation, they have the fire department, they have the, sorry, I'm a little tired, related fields. I'm sure there's a better way I could phrase that, but they have them way in. So I don't really have concerns with the infrastructure of that. I'm more referring back to what Member Cross said earlier about, is this a vehicle-based service? I mean, yes, there are vehicles involved, but in my interpretation of a vehicle-based service is that you're still serving a person first. I'm still a little bit caught up on that. I feel like it's still servicing a particular company. And I have one last thing to say. The comparison earlier to a cell phone tower, I don't think is a very good comparison, because a cell phone tower, yes, it's tall, but the amount of land it takes up is a lot lower than I think maybe like a vehicle charging station would be. Anyway, I said my piece.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Sorry, members of the board. Just one point of clarification kind of about the not detrimental then language. And I think the intent of that language is to, indicate that it is not more detrimental than other land uses contained within the PCC1 zoning district, not necessarily relative to the surrounding neighborhoods. Because again, we're trying to be location agnostic in this evaluation. So just wanted to make that point of clarification. Thank you.
I think we need to be location agnostic and also in some ways customer agnostic, because like most of my concerns about the proposal relate specifically to the robot cars. I really liked the quote that it's the battle between the humans and the robots. But at the same time, it reminded me that the land use, or the what is allowed in the zoning code is what would be built, what installations would be built. Could you have, this is really just an electric service station, and then the use that they need the use permit for is their contract with Waymo to service Waymo autonomous vehicles exclusively, as opposed to having this be just, an electric car version of a Circle K.
Well, so then wouldn't that still be an incorrect, like it wouldn't be a vehicle-based service then? Like you just said, it's offering charging electricity. I still feel like it would be, I don't know how accurate it is.
Well, I mean, service station is a place of business having pumps or storage tanks for liquid fuel dispensed retail directly into a motor vehicle. Here, instead of liquid fuel, it's electricity. And it's not synonymous, but I think it's a similar use. It's an electric gas station.
Is that considered vehicle-based service though? I thought a service station was like distinct. I thought that was its own.
Well, but I think we're all looking at vehicle-based service as like the only thing from the zoning administrator's opinion, where is he also talked about vehicle service, commercial service, parking facilities, service station, repair. He signaled out taxi or comparable vehicle-related uses. So we're looking at all the vehicle-related uses allowed in the PCC1 district. So gas stations, AutoZone, other places, Jiffy Lube.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way I look at it, and that's, I guess, I appreciate what you're saying, and I think I almost agree sometimes, and then I go back this way. But I think that it's mentioned in here, other services, and I think that, so I think that I still think it's a taxi service, and I don't know. I'm still on the detrimental thing, but I think it's not. I think, and I need to be more location agnostic, I guess, because I'm thinking about what everybody has said about the traffic and the safety, and I don't think that that's really appropriate for here. Not that it's not appropriate to be considered for the use permit, but for what we're doing here today.
Oh, and I'll be clear, I don't think I want this thing built, but I'm not prepared to say that it can't be built in the commercial zoning districts.
Go ahead.
Okay, I keep coming back to this idea of the vehicle-based services and the services like courier, delivery, taxi, ambulance dispatch and such, and having in a prior life actually running an ambulance company and knowing what it takes and how it dispatches it. And you don't put them in little pockets of, residential area, regardless of how it's zoned. It's not, well, that place simply is not big enough to be an ambulance dispatch place, as far as that goes. But if you talk about services, this particular site doesn't provide services except to electric vehicles. That's all it does. It charges them, and once in a while cleans them. But it doesn't provide couriers. It doesn't deliver. It doesn't dispatch. It doesn't coordinate rideshare. It simply charges a vehicle. And that's all it's doing. And if we're analogizing it to all of these other things that go well beyond that, which, if we're talking about electric vehicles, require them being charged, but you can charge them anywhere. You can charge them at the library. You can charge them at my house, for that matter. It's just not grounded well. And maybe that's the problem I'm having. The opinion is not grounded well. And maybe it's just because there isn't a way to shoehorn it into PCC1.
And this is also too is, again, I'm kind of hung up on this neighborhood thing because that word is thrown around and it's specifically bracketed next to PCC1. And this doesn't benefit the community. This doesn't benefit the neighborhood. This doesn't benefit the people. It benefits Terawatt and Waymo, because none of these people here could use that if they wanted to. They technically wouldn't even, there'd probably be a sign that says no trespassing private property. Whereas if there was like a vehicle service station, I could pop in there and say, hey, my car's idling funny, and some mechanic will come on and say, oh, let's see if we can get you in, or we're booked. But there would be some option to do it. And, this, just to be clear, is not, at least unless I'm missing something, this isn't benefiting the Meyer Park community. And the people in the neighborhood have no ability to use this commercial service. It's simply that Terawatt bought or is leasing the land, and then they are procuring the service to Waymo or whomever they choose. And so I think that's something to consider in a PCC1 determination, because it's not the same as if you build a coffee shop, build a library, build a car detailing place, build a marijuana a marijuana dispensary, a gun shop, and anything. It would be, people could walk in there and they would have the ability to patronize that. Nobody in the neighborhood or in this city, for that matter, has the ability to patronize that from where I'm seeing it.
All right, and I kind of want to also address, number one, acknowledging that really and truly, the city code just isn't made for this. It's just not.
And in all fairness, you are 100% right.
Yeah.
In all fairness, you're 100% right on this, and that was a very difficult decision. So, Mr. Levesque, they had to do something. Like they had to make a ruling, and maybe based on what exists in play, maybe that is the closest thing to something they have. But he had to do something. Something had to be done. So yes, I definitely acknowledge that.
So, and I guess if we approve the appeal, then we have to go to the second prong. And I would actually like a response from staff on this, because I just don't see how something so novel that we would be responsible for shoehorning it into another similar use or use. So if Chris or
While they're coming up, can I just ask a question?
Sure.
If we approve the appeal, we then have to state where we think it should go, right? But we're not committing it to go there.
Right.
We're simply saying, in our admittedly not great necessarily best judgment, but this is a better fit than where it was put before.
right, but I want to know why. Why do we have to do that?
So Chair Foy, in most situations where there is a reversal of a decision made, there's a clear direction. And so we're hoping to get, if there is a decision of approval of the appeal and overturning the decision, we need a clear direction as to where does the land use fall. Absent that, then we're still kind of maybe back to square one, is determining where the appropriate use is.
All right,
for
and
the
so,
request,
and
and then
like,
having to make another determination absent your involvement in that process.
and so he said, you could choose to use our direction, or you could find something that's more applicable.
True.
Okay, all right, thank you for clarifying that. Yeah.
I don't like it in PCC1. I don't.
I agree.
I agree.
And I have a thought based on just conversations where I think it should go. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that here.
Absolutely,
But
please.
it was thrown around by staff, it was thrown around by others, that general, and if you look and just start with the applicability and then go all the way down, it says PCC1 neighborhood, PCC2 general, and that is referenced throughout. And it's been said several times that it's general, not necessarily confined to neighborhood, and so that's just a thought I had. It doesn't mean I'm right, but again, there's no real precedence for this anywhere.
You are correct, there is no precedence for this anywhere. Okay, any other thoughts on where we might direct the zoning administrator to go?
I don't think it's a vehicle-based service. And I think that's because of the B to B to C nature of it, of having to have something downstream of it. And maybe that's at least pushes it out of PCC1.
Okay.
Or more to clarify the error that we're looking for.
Okay. Anybody else?
I would actually posit that it might possibly fit in light industrial, but certainly in general industrial.
Okay.
And I know, and I'll say this, we actually talked about that at development review. And of course, passed out of there, but there was some thought that this would be a better fit in an industrial setting rather than where it was because of the industrial nature of it.
Andrea, do you have any opinion?
It's just interesting because I do kind of agree with that, but not to move, I don't want to move too far away from the case because I know we're all tired, but it's just interesting then that like a service station or like a gas station, right, could theoretically be built here. Like, I don't know, I just think it's a little strange. I know that's not what we're discussing, but.
No, and I think that's the issue is that we have something that's a little unique, that the code's not really appropriately addressed in the past and really needs to be changed and updated. But this is what we have. And I think many of us feel like we personally don't want it in PP1, but we have to look at the law and the code and does it fit? Does it fit as a similar use? And that's where we're at. I honestly don't know.
I think a lot of our hangups are about who they're selling their product to, and I think that is part of the business use permit, whereas this is the land use. Can they put a parking lot and 30 charging stations? And I think the answer to that is yes.
And that may be where it's more appropriate. It might be appropriate in PP1, but instead of saying it's like a vehicle-based service, it's more like a parking lot. But then it's not to the public, right? So it's commercial.
But again, not to the public part goes to the business use as part of this specific plan, which we don't like. I think it's been really hard for us, even us who kind of understand that this is not the use permit appeal. And for even me, when I walked in, my concerns with the autonomous vehicle customers, in heavy air quotes, but that's part of the business use that they've proposed, as opposed to can you build an electric vehicle charging station?
Right. And you're right. And I looked at this all day, and that was the first thing that was on my mind. It's going to be very hard to separate business use permit and what we're looking at. And that's why I kept saying it's very specific, very specific. And myself, I've gone beyond that. So does anybody think we're ready for a vote? Do we need more discussion?
Okay, I'll call the question. Okay. I will move that we deny the appeal and affirm the opinion of the zoning administrator. Do I have a second?
Do I have a second? I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm used to doing that.
I'll second it for the purpose of a vote.
All right, I'm going to do a roll call. Andrea, what, yay or nay?
Nay.
Okay, and let's clarify. Nay means that you disagree with him and you don't want to deny it. Correct. All right, you.
Correct.
Okay. Richard. Robert.
Nay.
Sorry.
Nay.
Yay.
I'll vote yay.
Nay.
Nay.
So the nays have it.
As a point of order, I think we need to,
You have to have an affirmative decision.
we have to pass the, so somebody else needs to make a motion.
So we need a motion to approve the appeal. Is there a motion on the floor?
I'll move to approve the appeal of this case.
I'm going to do a roll call. Andrea first.
I need a second.
Sorry, I need a second. I need a second.
I'll move.
Oh, wait, you know what? Sean, our vice chair, just made a very good, where are we moving it? What are we recommending?
I'll amend the motion, and that we recommend that it be, our recommendation be that it fall into the general industrial category, and that potential uses that would fit into that one, let's see, until I get there, hold on, would be a fuel distribution station, and there's another one, actually, I think I saw another one there. Let's see, no, maybe not. Well, since they, and vehicle service.
Vehicle service, in a general.
In a general industrial.
Okay,
Vehicle service is allowed in light industrial as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, but the other one isn't. That's why.
Okay.
I'm suggesting two, and I want to keep it in general industrial.
Okay. General industrial fuel distribution station, all right.
I'm so sorry. Can you start over your motion so I can
Okay.
fully follow? I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm moving to approve the appeal of the case in question and make the recommendation that it be placed in the general industrial zoning category. The uses for it in that category could include fuel, let's see, how exactly do they say it? Fuel distribution, fuel distributing station, and vehicle service. Two potential uses.
I'll second.
All right.
I move to second.
Roll call vote. Andrea?
Aye.
Robert, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Nay. Nay.
Nay.
Kevin?
Aye.
Katie? Aye. All right, ayes have it. Ayes have it. 5-2, right? My math isn't that great. So ayes have it, 5-2. The motion passed. The appeal is approved with recommendation that it be put in the general use, general industrial, and the use be either a fuel destination station, fueling station, and what was the other one?
Vehicle service.
Vehicle service. All right. Diane, do we have any other business?
We will be having, I believe we will be having a meeting next month. We do not have an agenda for you yet.
Okay, what's the date? What's the date?
March 25th is the next Board of Adjustment hearing, and I believe we will have items on that agenda.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.